across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, good morning and welcome to the show. Especially big well done to you if you've been brave and noble enough and discerning enough to set your alarm for this moment. If that's you, I suggest you go and check in with some sort of psychologist, because if you're not asleep on a weekend when you could be and instead want to hang out with me, there's probably something a little bit wrong with you. But don't worry, I feel all the gratitude in the world to be sharing your company right now, because if you're weird, then that makes two of us, doesn't it? Do you know what? I must say, in this line of work, even when that alarm goes off at like 3:30 in the morning on a Saturday, I don't mind it, because it's really fun for me to come and sit here, hang out with you guys, okay, albeit I'm usually just sitting here by myself and you're like imaginary company. I just kind of think you're out there. But it's like just hanging out together, isn't it? And chit-chatting, and I get paid to do it. And I also get to invite awesome people onto the programme to share information and get me genned up on everything going on, give me the best opinions so I can go and win every single debate in every single pub, because surely that is my life's purpose. But what a privilege it is to be here in the studio. And it's also a very cool job, because today I've done something ultra fun, which is I've brought my best friend to work. Hey, this is Belinda de Lucy, ladies and gentlemen. You probably know her already. She was a Brexit Party MEP with me, and now she's a sort of doyenne of the broadcasting circuits. You're sort of the token right-wing Barbie, carted into studios to say profound and challenging and disturbing things to those poor leftists, but do it with a smiling face and an edge of glamour.
Absolutely. We like to sprinkle our glitter wherever we go. We're not doomsters. You know, you and I absolutely adore you. It's so lovely to be on. We've gone through a lot of peaks and troughs through the Brexit years together, and you know, we're here 6 years down the line and ready to carry on the good fight.
Oh my God, that's good fun. I was going to say that there were some things we did when we were together during the European Parliament days that probably never need to be broadcast.
Ever. Including our raps,
I was going to say, especially, we had this habit of getting very drunk in Strasbourg and recording freestyle raps.
Yes.
Yeah, there's people right now who are going to be messaging and go on, girls, get it on, let's do it. No, actually.
Another time.
Another time. But there you go. We are in great company. At least the next hour and a half after that is no doubt going to go downhill, because nobody can top the lofty heights of Belinda de Lucy. Or perhaps they can. Maybe it's you. Maybe you are the discerning gentleman or woman who thinks that you've got what it takes to entertain us all on air. Well, give it a go then. Don't just sit there. The number to call is 0344499 1000. Like I always say, it's your normal network rate. So it's kind of free, isn't it? It's not like you're phoning some sort of weird babe station line, although it kind of looks a bit like you are, doesn't it? My producer Dean's just like waving at me through the glass, like, where you going with this one, love? But there you go. 0344499 1000 is the number to call to chat to Belinda and I this morning. You can also use that number to send us a WhatsApp message or leave us a voice note on WhatsApp. Keep it clean. 8722 is the number if you'd rather send a text message. Now, you know what I always say. If you're going to send a text, you've got to write the word talk before your message, because, and this is where I come up with some sort of weird analogy that I never think through, just appears out of nowhere. If you don't, it might end up getting tangled in the spider's web of the god of all spiders, which sits in heaven, that all other arachnids on earth look to and pray to. And if you don't write the word talk before your message, it will get caught in his evil kingdom. So there you go. We're on X at talkTV. I have no idea what that was. This is why sometimes just inventing stuff on the spot doesn't always work out. Which is probably, hey, here comes a segue. It's probably the same as to be said for this stupid deal with France, which again looks like it's been invented on the spot and no doubt is not going to work out, because also it seems to me none of them even know what it's about. Let's have a little watch, shall we, of that iconic press conference, the groundbreaking deal.
For the very first time, migrants arriving via small boat will be detained and returned to France in short order to break the gang's business model, secure our borders, and get the results that people want to see.
results people want to see. Well, what do we know so far? We know that with this returns policy, France might take 6% of the people have come over. That means 94% is still chuffing coming here. And even the 6% we might be able to send back to France, we've got to take the same in number of people who apparently legally qualify to be here. And not just that, as if that wasn't bad enough and ridiculous enough, the EU now wants to block it, and all the leftists with their short fringes and their placards and their suicidal empathy are also going to make sure that every single oik who should be sent back across the channel is tooled up with an immigration lawyer.
Oh yes, and the migrant deal will also apparently let France decide who it takes back. So essentially, Keir Starmer's outsourced the control of our sovereign borders to a foreign country that I do not believe have our best interests at heart at all. I mean, Keir and Macron, they are lame ducks. They're yesterday's technocrats. This is a total PR stunt. They're both equally despised back at home with their domestic audience, and they're both equally hostile to British national interests. It feels like we have been occupied by a foreign force sometimes, because no one is batting for Britain around the negotiating tables. I haven't seen it for decades, even under the Tories as well. You could send Paddington Bear in there and get a better deal than Keir, who can't negotiate his way out of a paper bag. You just know we're going to lose.
Oh my gosh, that just reminds me of the best example of Sir Keir Starmer's brilliant art of the deal, right? And I'm not talking about the time he started pouring at Donald Trump and pulling things out of his lapel and was basically, you know, kissing the boots and saying, "Come over for a stank fish." Oh my God, it was so sycophantic, it was nauseating. No, but the fact that if there's one thing actually you can use to bribe the French, it's fish. Right.
Oh my gosh.
Those cheese-eating surrender monkeys love a bit of our fish. They will get really up in arms if they can't come into our side of the channel and start grabbing out all the scallops and the whelks, and, you know, they literally go tonto over this. And so, as a result of Brexit, we, in theory, should have taken back control of our waters, and we had this deal with the EU that they could carry on fishing in our waters, but it was a period of time, and after that it would incrementally reduce and reduce and reduce. And so when Sir Keir Starmer was asked by the EU, right, you know, do you want to let us go and get your fish again? He was like, no, I'm only going to give you 4 more years. And the EU's like, no, come on, lad, 5 more years of fish, please. He's like, no, I'm only going to give you 4 years. I've realised to do the perfect Starmer impression, just speak without opening your teeth.
Oh, it's like Zippy from Rainbow. If you remember Rainbow, the children book, you know, Zippy. But Zippy actually had a personality.
Zippy did have a personality and actually a bit of wit about him. Had some charisma, that weird little thing.
What did Keir get for it, though? I mean, I think it was 12 years.
Yeah, no, this is the best thing. The EU's like, we want 5 years.
Yeah.
And he's like, I'll only give you 4. No, come on, Keir, 5. OK, 12. It's like, what?
And for what? For what? The chance at having some meetings on discussing e-passport queues for some middle-class people who are really obsessed with that being the worst thing possible in the world to wait 5 minutes for. I mean, it is literally sums labour up in a nutshell that they'll decimate our fishing industry, hurt our coastal communities, all to appease the waiting time for some privileged few who get to jet set all the time and, you know, hate the odd minute queuing. I mean, he doesn't negotiate for us. No one feels, well, very few people, I think, feel like Labour or the Tory party have been having the banner for this country and for the interests of this British people, and that's why I think Reform are doing so well in the poll. They're the only party that says, hang on a minute, Brits first.
They've got UK in the name, it helps. They actually know who they represent, which makes a massive difference in this day and age. But tell me, we were sitting getting our makeup done earlier. I almost got identical hair, haven't we?
Yes,
We're sort of like twins today. You told me quite what you thought about Emmanuel Macron and wanted to know whether there was a word that was Ofcom approved to describe him. Yeah. And we don't have time to look through the Ofcom list, so let's just test the mettle of producer Dean, shall we? And just go for it anyway, because it's only 11 minutes past 6 in the morning.
Yes, I think children are still going to be in bed. No, I was trying to think of a word that described Macron. What did I feel he was and represented and mimicked? And suddenly a word came to mind, and a couple of words, and I was just like, Macron, he's a queef in Cuban heels. And I think it was like, and this word
what does that word mean? Well, I googled it.
Well, I thought it was I heard it from the In-Betweeners or somewhere like that. I think that's what it was. But yes, what did Google say, Alex? It was.
The Google described it as an involuntary expulsion of gas from a woman, but not where you might think, or perhaps that is where you think. Anyway, it is 11 minutes past 6 in the morning. Good morning. Welcome to the show. This is kind of setting the tone for the rest of the day. Now, let's talk about setting the tone. What do you make of reform at the moment? Because, of course, we're basically, you know, a former Brexit Party MEPs, and that sort of got rebranded reform. We know everybody in reform. It's still very much our sort of our friends, aren't they? Our friends and our relatives. And they're beginning to take on some friends and relatives from the Conservative Party. The latest defection is Sir Jake Berry. Before that, it was David Jones, MP, who used to be Secretary of State for Wales. Jake Berry has now come across former chairman of the Conservative Party. Do you see these as vital scalps, or are you worried that reform's going to end up being a sort of repository for Conservatives who either no longer have their seats or realise they're on a sinking ship and want to preserve their political careers?
I think it is a very good idea that reform reflects people from both Labour and the Conservative Party and no party at all. I think one of reform's greatest appeals is going to be to the electorate that are registered but that just don't vote. So over 30% of people that have no interest in connecting with politics and voting anymore because they've been such a useless bunch of parties, and now reform's there. It's twinkling in people's eyes like, oh, I might bother to go to the ballot box. So I have no problem with the Tory or Labour Party or people from no parties or the monster raving loony party, if they are good quality candidates with great experience, if they've had the courage of conviction for decades, and this isn't just a spin on the heel, suddenly I'm turning from, you know, what's the flavour of the month like Flip-Flop Keir does all the time. I think reform could do well out of it and also could gather a load more votes. And by the way, that we are in the position where we need to win, and to win an election you have to appeal to a huge amount of people. You just can't go on the fringes left, right and centre. And I think if some of the Tory people, I mean the ones that have come so far, have been amazing. Dame Andrea Jenkins, you know, I did the walk to leave with her from Sunderland to London. I don't know if you remember the Brexit march that we did 2 weeks back in March 2019, I think it was. She's an amazing candidate for Reform UK. I do think we need to be careful though. I think we need to have really high standards, and we need to have a cut-off time. I don't think there should be any jumping ship.
You can't be sort of like, you know, 6 weeks before the general election going, I want to stand again, please.
No, walk the plank if it's 6 weeks.
What was interesting is looking at the way that the Number 10 press office reacted to this, because when Jake Berry first said, look, that's it, I'm out of politics, but I want to do everything I can to help Reform win, there are Tories who said, well, that's a good get, isn't it? He's very well organised, he gets political campaigning, he's a hard-working man, he was a very popular chairman of this party, that experience is going to help a lot to Reform UK. And then by the end of the day, after 24 hours, they're churning out the spite and the venom, going, he loves net zero, he voted Remain. And you sort of think, OK, so how puritanical does Reform need to be? Can we accept Damascene conversions where people have suddenly gone, well, a bit like Robert Jenrick had, you know, he took that Ozempic, shaved his head and became a hard nut. You know, some might say that Jake Berry is a sort of One Nation Tory who has sort of, you know, evolved into a proper small C Conservative. But it was interesting seeing this reaction and the sort of tying into what other people are saying about Reform, which is, oh, it's gone a bit soft. That Nigel Farage used to be the vanguard of changing public opinion, however unpopular it was. And now he's kind of cowering behind even people in the Conservative Party, afraid to mention the word Islam, afraid to really talk about multiculturalism. You know, people are sort of pushing him and goading him to make promises on mass deportations. And he's like, look, I'm just not going to do that. Is he right? Has he lost his nerve, or is he right to be taking that approach?
I think he's playing the long game. I really do. We're still very early doors, and I think building up a party can be very chaotic. So much volunteer help is needed, so much vetting. You know, we are, I think, the party under more scrutiny than any other party at the moment, and they're doing a huge amount of ground root work, and that is essential. And before policies and opinions that might reflect, you know, people more like you and I, let's be honest, I think the groundwork needs to be done first and then nearer to the election. I think I'm more right-wing than some of Reform's policies, and that's okay, because I'm not after a perfect political party, because that is going to lead to absolute carnage.
People would say what you're saying is, well, we've heard that all before from the Conservatives. Oh, we're a broad church with a range of values and things like that. And people say, no, it's not good enough. You need to.
Oh, yeah, I don't want to be a broad
leadership right now. Yeah. This is the 11th hour. We need you to be tough. That's the sort of line that'd be coming out of those people who are minded to back Mr. Habib's setup.
Yeah, well, I think that's probably, you know, not going to see any movement in politics on a serious level, you know, in Parliament. I think that the only real bet at the moment is Reform UK. But I also think Nigel has put the hours in. He's the first, you know, high-profile politician that went on the boats into the Channel years ago now to go and expose what a lot of the mainstream media and political parties were trying to cover up, the horrific break-in of our country. It was Nigel there on the front line. You know, he has shown throughout the last 30 years what he's prepared to risk and sacrifice to stick his neck above the parapet for this country. You know, he gets death threats, the poor guy. You know, he has to have security all the time. So it's not like he hasn't told people before where he stands on these issues. And yes, if his language seems soft at the moment, of course it's going to make people think, well, hang on a minute, I thought you were ruthless, you know, fanged.
I think as well, like, one thing I always say is when it comes to the rules of the game with media and with politics, it's a different set of rules for Nigel. You know, Robert Jenrick can do what he likes, say what he likes. He can talk about burqas and people pushing through ticket barriers and, you know, all the rest of it. You can have Chris Philp going around, you know, sort of asking Roma gypsies what they're doing, you know, in tent encampments in the centre of London. But if Nigel did any of those things, the cacophony of cries calling him a racist, a danger, a xenophobe would eclipse anything else he has to say.
And it might put a lot of voters off. And what John Jenrick is promising, the Tory party's not going to deliver. Oh, he's good with words and he's, you know, doing the... He did what Boris did as soon as the boat started. We're going to turn back every boat, Boris said. You know, think of Rishi. We're going to stop the boat. It's all a load of baloney. The party is a clapped-out vehicle with no engine, no direction, not even a steering wheel. The Conservative Party is an empty shell. So one piping up saying that they're going to do all this right-wing stuff, that's not going to move the car anyway, even if he becomes leader. Remember, the Conservative Party voted against Robert Jenrick becoming leader in the leadership contest. They don't want him.
We'll probably do it again, I reckon.
Well, that's it. I mean, I like what he has to say, but do I think the Tories are going to ever get behind Robert Jenrick? Not a chance. Not in reality if they get into power.
And also, I kind of think that, you know, when people ask me about Nigel and whether he's gone soft and this, that and the other, and what is he, what does he really stand for? I say, of all the politicians from the last 20, 30 years, at least he's the one person you know what he stands for. You know, people are like, is he a Thatcherite? Is he a this? Is he that? I'm like, no, he's a Farageist. He's got his own brand of politics and he's always gone out beating the drum for it, love him or loathe him. He's actually quite identifiable with his ideology.
I call him the Wat Tyler of the modern times. I think he is somewhat of a folk hero. He doesn't sell himself as a saint. No, I do. He really doesn't. He's honest and open about who he is. He's very self-deprecating. I don't trust anyone who sells themselves as a saint, which is pretty much 90% in Westminster. They're always the dodgy ones. You know, people like the honest talking Nigel, and he hasn't changed really over the last few years. But I do think it's important now to gather in as many votes as you can, knowing who Nigel is. And we know his stance on mass immigration. He's been talking about population explosion for years and the traffic on the roads.
That's what I find quite funny when people are now going, but does he really like immigration after? It's like, anyway, I mean, one thing is for sure, like I said, the rules regarding Nigel are different to any other politician because long ago the establishment perceived him to be this political threat. We know the establishment are no big fans of populism, and so they sort of turned him into a bit of a cartoon villain, like a sort of pantomime character. And I think this was very much on display in this week's Prime Minister's questions. Let's have a little eyeball of that, shall we?
The main reason this country wisely voted for Brexit back in 2016, and that included millions of Labour supporters, is because we wanted to take back control of our borders so that we alone could decide who comes and settles in our country. Does the Prime Minister understand that demand today is even greater than it was back in 2016, and that we demand, the country demands, that you say to the French President, well, you shut up.
Don't be so disrespectful. I mean, what I see there, it was so pointlessly rude and disrespectful, okay? It's a member parliament, whether you like his politics or don't, he's the representative, he's the leader of the party at the moment, polling the highest in the land, which means that at least 30% of people, 1/3 of people, wants to hear what he has to say. And this whole, have you got a code? We can't hear. It is not just disrespectful to him. To me, that is flagrantly disrespectful and rude and dismissive of most of the country.
I was disappointed in the Speaker of the House not intervening, because this isn't the first time it's happened. And it's so, the British people deserve better. Parliament's become a circus. You know, the establishment has laughed at us since Brexit. They hold their noses at the deplorables, like you and I and millions of others who just want the UK
We are the deplorables.
Just want the UK to make their own laws and put British interests first. I mean, these are basic minimum standards of what most countries give their people, but not us. And the establishment hate the fact that many of us are going to vote reform. They hate the fact we're saying, no, we don't want globalism, we don't want your woke agenda, your net zero, your mass immigration, your high tax, which is both the Tory and the Labour Party, by the way. And anyone, they were laughing and heckling millions of British voters. That's what it felt like.
And
but
that
shame
whole,
on
like,
them.
how Brexit, we were lied to. It sort of reminded me of the most grotesque elements of 2016. I mean, we were there for that as Brexit Party MEPs, pushing, simply to make sure that the nation's vote would be honoured, that we had democracy in this country. And you just remember that half of those Egypts sitting in that parliament there are just really detached from the country, don't care. They have this superior attitude. They shower themselves in this faux moral rectitude, thinking that they're the sort of bastions of, you know, righteousness. It's like, chuff off, the lot of you.
Yeah, and it wasn't just about leaving that parliament, by the way. It was about taking control back of Westminster. Westminster had gone rogue while in the EU, gone completely rogue. They outsourced everything. They didn't even read the directives that were coming through to dictate our laws. They just signed them off. They just couldn't care less. And that's what I hated about it. And unfortunately, Westminster fought back. They're like, no, we like giving up sovereignty. We like giving up our jobs. We get half a day work now because the EU does it also. They fought so hard against the people saying, we want a stake in the laws we live under. We want that ballot box to mean something. But now, as we vote on mass immigration and get it denied every time, that peaceful vehicle for change, the ballot box, is the one being destroyed and trampled on by both the Labour and the Conservative parties, by their lying, their manifesto U-turns. They've done so much to damage democracy in the country, not just Brexit, but by their own ballot box and treatment of their manifestos.
It's absolutely the disregard to the nation. I'm glad you actually brought up the subject of mass migration, the fact that absolutely nobody has asked for this. In fact, we voted against it repeatedly. So who do you reckon is to blame for the UK's migrant crisis? That's what we're also asking you today. Who do you point the finger of blame at? Whose head should roll? If we were to bring back the guillotine, who's first in the queue? That's probably a bit tasty. Hello, Met Police, sorry. Who is to blame for the... It was a joke, my God. Who is to blame for the UK's migrant crisis? Is it Tony Blair? Everyone says, oh, it was Tony. He started it, didn't he? He loved it. The Labour Party? Is it the Conservative Party? We do know, of course, when Boris Johnson changed all the various thresholds for being able to come over here legally, all of a sudden our immigration numbers were above 1 million a year. Not net. Net was almost 1 million a year, but the gross amount was well over 1 million a year. 1 million people coming here a year. Madness. Is it actually Macron and France when it comes to all those small boats? Because they should be doing what we've asked them to do, what we've paid them money to do, but they're not. Is it the EU with all of their open borders? Go on. Who is first in the... I feel like I'm just coming with so much violence today. Who is first in the queue to be pointed at and told off?
Yeah, get their thumb screwed. Go that far.
Oh, no, we allowed to do that? I don't know. I mean, in this day and age, I could be incited. I'll be with Lucy Connolly next. Oh, poor Luce, poor political prisoner. But you've got to be careful in this day and age. Anyway, let me know who you think is the person who is the most culpable, the irreparable social damage that successive governments have done. Lost a word then. Right, let's do some messages before we go to break. Morning. Alex, what a joy Saturday mornings have become listening to you prattling on. I like that, prattling. So, last week's F1 race at Silverstone was one of the best of all time, no? Cheers, Nick. The The Kitchen. Well, it's a weird nickname to have. My name is The Kitchen. It's like some sort of odd wrestler from the 80s who didn't have a better moniker. It wasn't the best of all time. How long have you been alive? Do you not remember, like, 96, where Hill spun off in the gravel trap, or the jeopardy of that? Even a few years ago with, what's his name, the little Chinese driver whose car flew up, went down between the tyre barrier and the chicken wire fence where the audience are, somehow managed to, like, go on its side and slot itself down. The little fella managed to actually survive it. George Russell parked his car, ran over like Tom Cruise to make sure he was okay. So yeah, I mean, great, we had some overtaking. That was nice this year. A little bit of weather came, which was also fun, but was it the best? Hardly. Morning, Alex and Belinda. No matter what deal Starmer thinks he's struck, I'm confident when Reform get in, they will move every unrequired migrant back from whence they came, says Steve. See, I kind of think this is also what they might do. Most parties do this. They say one thing before the election, then they show their true colours after the election. Morning, Alex. My dad is driving us to Bournemouth, but asked me to text in. He's a former Conservative voter who voted Reform at the last election because he wants real reform. He is bored and fed up with the system that allows MPs to waste the public's time with the PMQs that happened to Nigel this week. It is childish. The whole system with the Speaker needs reform. Parliament needs closing. A new modern system should be put in place. We're the laughing stock of the world. When it comes to actually reforming politics, we could get into this deep, actually. But do you know, we have more elected members per capita than almost every country on earth. When you add together all the people in the Commons and the Lords, which is well over 1,000, then you chuck in the devolved governments as well. Waste of time those things are. Wales and, you know, Northern Ireland and Scotland. Then you throw in all the mayors, the metro mayors and the regional. I mean, there's more politicians in this country than people, for crying out loud.
And look at the job they're doing.
And look at what they're getting up to. Good morning, Alex and Belinda. Great start to your show as ever. It's obvious to any sane person that Stalin is now a busted flush. Mind you, he's never been in the game anyway. What a complete buffoon, says Warwick from Devon. Right, we're going to take a short break now, but don't go anywhere because we're going to be back to keep you company and entertain you after this.
What we're talking about here, 50 a week, something like that.
Yeah, 50 to 50 a week. Yeah.
It's 50 a week. Okay. You said today there's about over 700.
We think 700 a day, 2,599 last week. Think about that.
So it's anything up to 1,000 a day, right, at the moment.
Yeah.
Now, how the hell have we got here? Because in 2018, it was around the number of migrants crossing the Channel was 299 for the year.
Yeah, good morning. Now, I actually have a cheeky little side hustle that I get up to, which I'm going to shamelessly tell you about right now, because there's a fantastic other platform out there called Substack, which is a reading platform, so it's not a competitor to here at In Talk Towers, but it's where you get to sort of write stuff and people who like you get to read it, and sometimes you can stick up some videos and interviews, and so that's where I sort of do my other bits of journalism. Isming. And I talk about all sorts. I mean, you've got all sorts on there. You've got various interviews. You've got a really good interview of Nigel where we're getting drunk on cider together. That was great fun. I also controversially interviewed Tommy Robinson, which sort of created quite a hoo-ha. But I always think as a journalist, you should go out there and speak to everybody of cultural significance. I've spoken to some brilliant people about Islam. I've also spoken to people about UFOs, which we're going to talk about later because it's a fun subject. Anyway, last night when I was sort of getting ready for bed at like 5:30 in the afternoon, whatever it was, you kind of go through the motions of trying to do beddish type activities. So I went and had a bath, and while I was sitting in the bath, I thought I'm going to write an article on Substack all about how grim London is, because it's absolutely awful. So I've written this piece and I've done all my research into the GDP that London makes every year for Britain, 25%, folks, the amount of visits it gets, which is 20.3 million overnight stays per year compared to the next city, which is Edinburgh, of 2.3 million. And also the fact that most people, if they're coming to do business in Britain, even if they're coming on holiday, the capital city almost always features. Everyone flies into Heathrow or Gatwick, spends a few days in London before perhaps dispersing into the Cotswolds or the Lake District or wherever else they may want to go. And if you've come to London to do business, the likelihood is you have come to London to do it. And yet, what we now have in London, and this is writ large here today in the Daily Mail, so copycats, no, they didn't know I was writing my piece, but they have written much the same thing, is a capital city where you've got migrant shanty towns, fatal stabbings. The kids with the zombie knives aren't just smashing each other in now. No, they're going after someone for wearing a Rolex, which is something that Londoners know anyway. So Jim Ratcliffe, who's the UK's third richest man, no longer wears a watch in London. It's too dangerous. I was reading a piece today. Sir Mo Farah has moved his kids to Qatar. He's worried about the safety in London. And the exodus, I think it's something like 11,000 millionaires have left London alone in the last year. 11,000. This exodus that's happening from London, of all the sane people, all the people who say, I can't live here anymore, of which I include myself, is sort of hollowing out the capital and leaving this disgusting vacuum where I'm worried. Another thing the Labour Party have done now is decriminalised homelessness, which sounds like a very kind and caring thing to do. Why should it be legal if someone can't find a room for the night to sleep on the street? No, but what it might do, and what I fear it's going to do, is lead to all these tent cities like you have in America.
Yeah, well, it is. It is. I mean, you see it. I see it on Park Lane all the time. It is. I think it's just the beginning. Just as in 2018, we just saw I think it was about 200 boats come in 2018, and then suddenly went up to the 40,000 a year last year. I think the small tent cities we're seeing now are just going to grow and grow, and of course it's a huge pull factor for those who come on the boats to just set up home wherever they like. I think they're hotbeds of antisocial behaviour as well. Yeah. It is. London used to be a place that my teenage girls could walk around on their own during the day. Now I'm like, cover up, don't, have your phone in your hand, make sure it's in a bag with a zip. And what's really sad about it, this is our treasure of a capital city. And yes, it will survive Sadiq Khan. It survived the Great Fire. It survived the plague, it survived the Blitz.
I don't know, Sadiq Khan is a sort of, natural disaster that no one's really prepared for.
Yeah, I still think the people of this country will take back control of London eventually from the hands of Sadiq Khan. And I think Sadiq Khan's got other priorities. I don't think he cares that much about the city and its representation of the UK at all. He's got other projects. That wonderful woman on social media, Charlotte Gill, who's at that Woke Waste Twitter handle.
We love Charlotte Gill.
She's fantastic. She's doing a lot of research into what Sadiq Khan is actually up to,
What
other
is
than
he up
his
to?
mayoral duties of just talking about climate change in Gaza all the time and not knife crime.
Oh, yeah, climate change in Gaza,
I mean,
the
that's
most
literally
important things to be affecting in London right
yeah,
now.
he won't comment on the grooming gangs that are
was
apparently rife
so
in London.
appalling.
Won't give them a second of a day, and yet he was quick as a gnat to jump on the George Lloyd, the criminal who died in
George
police.
Floyd.
George Floyd.
They
George
gave
Floyd.
him-
See, I
him a
don't even know
do-over
who
there.
is that irrelevant. So
He's
a
that
foreign
irrelevant.
criminal, 3,500 miles away. He was making speeches. In fact, I'll tell you, this is the speech he made
Go
about
on, get it out, girl.
George Floyd when he died in police custody, and then compare it to the response he gave about the grooming gangs. He said, George Floyd, this brutal killing must be a catalyst for change worldwide. No country, city, police service or institution can absolve itself of the responsibility to do better. Listen to the passion, the anger he has at the death of this foreigner.
What has this got to do with the Met Police?
Right, and then compare it to when he's asked by Susan Hall.
We love Susan Hall.
We love Susan Hall, about the grooming gang scandal, about the grooming gangs in London. He cannot be bothered to give a second of his time. There's no anger, there's no passion, there's no hashtag
It's worse
believe.
than that. He was doing that thing that people like him do, where he's deliberately being challenging, saying, go on, say the word Muslim. Go on, say it. Just you dare to say it and I'm going to come after you. It was
Shocking.
grotesque. The man is absolutely deplorable. I cannot stand him. But, I just want to talk with you about this because I don't know how much you're prepared to say now on air, but as we're best mates and hang out a lot and go for our long walks, which always involve stopping by the pub,
Yep, love it.
we talk a lot about what's changed in London and have shared together a lot of our experiences living in the same neighbourhood of men harassing us, following us down the street. You've been attacked, but you've got 4 daughters. Most of them are teenagers.
Yeah.
And you've told me some pretty horrific things that they've had to endure, because I think when it comes to the creepy foreign men, it's the teenage girls who are far more vulnerable than us old birds.
Yeah, listen, for me, it's nothing about race at all, but it is about mass uncontrolled migration from certain, I believe, cultures that are perhaps more prone to, once they get here, to viewing women and girls as more easier meat, or controlling women. I have had awful experiences in London. I've had Islamist intimidation, threats. I've spent a lot of time in successful Muslim countries, especially Abu Dhabi, over the last 20 years. I have never for 1 second experienced the kind of vile fanaticism and Islamist intimidation in those Muslim countries as I have in the streets of England. The government have got something wrong here. If I first experienced it in 2001 when I lived in the Tower Hamlets.
Gosh, that was a brave thing to do.
It was. I had no idea. I was just, a young girl from an English town, and suddenly that move to the Tower Hamlets, my eyes were like, oh my gosh, I didn't realise there were parts of England like this. I was spat on for wearing shorts, heckled by men in Islamist wear with foreign accents. So I'm not talking, ordinary, wonderful British Muslims who just get by like you and I and want to get on. It's a specific kind of religious fanaticism that has crept onto our streets. And we moved from the Tower Hamlets because I didn't find it a particularly pleasant place to live back then. Maybe it's changed. Moved to West London.
To something that's even more unrecognisable.
Moved to West London, and I had a really horrible incident. I was walking to pick up my daughters from school in a big mum T-shirt, big mum shorts, halfway down to the knees, and on my own. And 2 men came striding up to me, cornered me, wouldn't let me pass, both again in Islamic dress, with very, very foreign accents, shouting at me that I was not wearing the dress code appropriate for their area. And I tried to pass, they wouldn't let me pass, they just kept shouting at me, calling me names. And I'm a tough cookie, Alex, right? I am a really tough cookie. I burst into tears. I just felt really scared. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know when they were going to let me pass. I didn't even know what was going on. I was like, what is happening? This is my home, and there's been a culture shift in some areas, and I called the police. I called the police because I thought this is not something I want my daughters to have to face, because this was a road just by my house. And I called the police, and their response to me, I felt, was as scary as what had happened.
Why? What happened?
They sent round a gentleman who kept reminding me that he was Muslim, not in a way where he was in a kind of happy and nice way, but as more, I felt very much like I've got to be careful what I say and how I address this and how I speak about it. And I felt like I was being interviewed a little bit. And I was explaining to him how worried I was that this was sort of creeping onto the streets near where I lived, and that I had 4 daughters, and there must be CCTV cameras, and there must be some way of finding out who these guys were. And in the end, all I got from the police was, we'll talk to the local imam and get him to chat with the congregation, and I thought, and it really shocked me. I thought, hang on, this isn't how it's supposed to.
You've been spat on, blocked in your passage, intimidated, threatened by foreign men, and then the police have the audacity to essentially question you.
So what frightened me as well, especially the hearing about the horrific grooming gang scandal up and down the country, which is, I think, the worst thing that children of this country have been through, you know, certainly in my lifetime. That climate of fear for girls and young women to report crimes by certain communities, you know, the authorities have created that, whereas I feel like somehow I'm being the bad person. Yeah. We're the wrong kind of victims. We won't be treated in the same way.
What's so terrifying, I find, is the way that they're brainwashing and gaslighting girls today. Look, it's part of human nature to pattern form, to risk assess, to sort of think that, you know, when these things happen, you put it together and you go, right, in future, that could represent a danger. And young girls today are being made to regard everybody who's come over on a small boat as some sort of hero who deserves our love and respect and our attention. Any man who wants to come into the toilet is wearing a frock as, again, someone who is, you know, the next best thing to a saint. Basically being asked to deconstruct all of those normal reactions that provide safety, you know, being brainwashed into disregarding the hair standing up on the back of their neck. It's so dangerous. It's so misogynistic. It's so wicked.
But I do find the liberal left deeply misogynistic. They actually, you know, tend to be more the Islamist apologists, the big supporters of men having access to women's changing rooms, safe spaces, sports, you know, allowing men to redefine what a woman is. It's all from that sort of liberal left side who parade about as if they are the next Messiah and as the saints. And actually, I don't think women are doing too well under them at all. And the other people I feel for is very much, you know, migrant women as well, Muslim women in their communities as well. You know, may not feel like they get the same amount of attention and response from the authorities.
Well, it's worth noticing actually that when it came to some of these grooming gangs, like the ones in Oldham, the whistleblowers were the daughters of the perpetrators. They were the women from the community who said enough is enough. We don't want to have this going on. Let's do some of your messages before we go to break. Lisa, or Liza, I'm not sure how you say Liza, Liza, whoever you are, we love you. In Dorset, says, so lovely to see Belinda on your show. I'm a huge fan.
Oh, thank you.
So am I. She's my best friend. Good morning, Alex. I became the unelected heads blame the unelected heads running the Home Office and other departments. They put up the barriers, stopping MPs from doing the will of the people, says Steve in Cambridge. Yeah, a lot of people say it's the blob in Whitehall. Dominic Cummings certainly says it's all of these do-gooders with their sort of little unions and their special groups, all the apparatchiks in the civil service are all woke and, you know, bow down to the rainbow flag. Good morning, Alex and Belinda. What fascinates me is when our politicians in opposition, they have all the answers to all the problems, yet when they are in power, they do nothing. I really despair. Says Brian in Worthing, or Brian Worthing, I'm not sure which. Morning, Alex and Belinda, loving the show, and I'm also loving what you're wearing today. We just wanted to say hi, and I watch it every week.
Isn't that lovely? You do look very pretty.
I feel like I'm a bridesmaid. If I had some sort of, you know, floral ensemble, I'd be perfectly happy carrying a bridal train. Right, we're going to be taking a little break now, but don't go anywhere because Belinda and I have got so much more to serve up. It's Wimbledon, but the aces of... I don't know. That was going to be a good something.
It's going to be beautiful, Alex.
Let's be sure you're going to get aces and... No, I can't do it. Let's just talk about love. I'm going to go to break. that now the junior doctors are going to be going on strike again, and they've upset everyone so much, the BMA, that good old Lord Robert Winston, him of fertility goodness with that amazing sort of 1980s tash. I love that guy, very sensible character indeed, has actually binned the BMA, saying that this is despicable at this point. This is becoming, well, I don't want to put words in his mouth, so I'll just say what I think, grasping, greedy and totally unrealistic. We know that the country's economy is in a pretty terrible state. Junior doctors have already been given a 29% pay rise, basically, or 28.9%, and now they're calling for another 29%, and yet this is involving junior doctors earning over £100,000 who are now going to go on strike to ask for more money. Do you know what sticks in my craw about this? Now, I don't want to sound sort of I don't want to sound out of touch here, but depending where you live in the country, £100,000 today isn't what £100,000 was in the 90s, OK? Especially when you get people who run the sort of, you know, whatever, or, you know, some quango on £750,000 a year or something like that. And doctors save lives, and it's special, you know, it's a lot of training to get there, a lot of time, effort, very long hours, important skill sets. And yes, if they go to other countries, they could probably be paid more than that. But what really sticks in my craw is when people decide to go and work in the public sector, they know how much they're going to be paid before they take those jobs. It's in the public domain. And if your job is the duty of care to save lives, to then decide you're going to stage a walkout when you knew how much you were being paid in the first place, when you're earning well above the national average, and when actually quitting your job for however long time it is going to directly affect the well-being of the very people you took a Hippocratic oath to serve. Yes, I might have some sympathy. Wouldn't it be great if there was a magic money tree and we could pay everybody a lot more money? Me personally, I would go first and give that to the nurses. But you know, these people, they might be junior doctors, but if they work hard down the line, they'll end up consultants and tooling around in Lambos.
And they get very good pensions as well, and they deserve them. It is, as you said, it's not just the hours they put in and the skill sets. I mean, being a doctor at the life and death bedside of people and all that comes with it, I actually do have... My grandfather was a doctor. He was on the Burma Railway during the Second World War and came back, I think he was about 7.5 stone, went straight back into the surgery, no questions asked, and just, you know, got on with serving his, you know, the people in his residential area just as he had before the war, you know, no question asked. I think it's changed a little bit now, and I think what surprises me is they're not uniquely affected by the cost of living. I don't think they're quite... The penny hasn't dropped. Everybody is suffering in every sector, from teachers to bin men to electricians to plumbers. Everything's getting more expensive for everyone. They don't have the luxury of going, right, well, I'm going to do a fancy pants PR stunt and get into the papers and get my salary raised. We're all in it, unfortunately, together. And as you said, we don't have a magic money tree, but, you know, Keir does for everyone else, by the way, just not his own people.
The people paying the taxes, who pay their salaries and pay their pensions, because most of those people have to toil 365 days a year. No one's paying for them to go on holiday. No one's paying for them to have time off in lieu or sick leave. No one's paying for their pensions. A lot of people these days don't even have a blimmin' pension. And actually, doctors are exempt from paying tax on pensions over £1 million. I mean, get on!
I think just for the moment, just hold your horses and just wait until the economy grows, because I do think we have to attract more people. We have to attract more people to become doctors. But you know who's stopping it? The BMA are capping the medical spaces for students, for British students, not for foreign students, for British students, capping them at about, I think it's between 7,000 and 9,000 a year. So all the brightest and the best young Brits who want to train up as doctors and go in and help the NHS are being turned away by the BMA and the government, who both agreed, no, we're going to cap them and make it tiny numbers so we can depend on cheap foreign labour more and screw over the British domestic workforce. That That whole thing has to change.
Yeah.
But to attract doctors in the first place, you do have to have a good salary and to stop them from going to Australia. But now is not the time. Hold your horses. Everyone's suffering.
Exactly. Sensible words from Belinda de Lucy. Now we're going to take another quick break, but don't go anywhere because I'm going to do that UFO story after the break because I'm Alex and that's how I roll. If you want to talk about any of the things we've been discussing today, the number to call is 03444 99 1000. It's your normal network rate. You can use that number to send me a WhatsApp or leave me a voice note on WhatsApp and I'll play out as many as I can as long as they're clean. 8722 is the number to text. Right, talk before your message. And we're back after this.
What we're talking about here, 50 a week, something like that.
Yeah, 50 to 50 a week. Yeah.
It's 50 a week. Okay, you said today there's about over 700.
We think 700 a day, 2,599 last week. Think about that.
So it's anything up to 1,000 a day, right, at the moment.
Yeah.
Now, how the hell have we got here? Because in 2018, it was the number of migrants crossing the Channel was 299 for the year.
All right, welcome back. Belinda, you'll be pleased to know that TechOp has Googled the choice word you used to describe Emmanuel Macron to see if it was on Ofcom's list of unlawful words, and it ain't.
Yay, we're free! Une petite cuif, Macron. I fart in his general direction. What film?
I have no idea what that
Monty
is.
Python.
I'm sorry. Those people are going to be disgusted at me now. They're going to be chasing me out of pitchforks saying you're not a true Brit after all. Now, I loved this story because, can I just say, anyone who has been watching the weekends with me since I took over the role from our wonderful friend David Bull knows that I blimmin' love the Daily Star. It's glorious. It's actually it's comedy gold. It makes Private Eye look really backdated and pointless. It's got the best quips, the best headlines, the weirdest stories. Anyway, I've spotted this on page 11, which is, again, if anyone knows me personally, I don't get to do this stuff on there much, is really up my street. Get this. A top secret UFO program is holding 3... Oh, well done. I love that second. Look at that. Look what he's done. 3 crashed spacecrafts in the UK. That's according to a whistleblower. The intelligence source believes the government has handed over all UFO research to a private sector firm to reverse engineer the technology for military use. One craft is from the Penturk, or Penta, don't you say that? Penturk. UFO incident in Wales on February 2016. Don't know about that one. Where witnesses reported seeing a huge pyramid of light. Another is from a crash site in Scotland. And a third dates back to 1969 when a UFO was reported to have crashed off Blackpool. The bombshell information has been passed to ufologist and filmmaker Mark Christopher Lee. And he's saying that this source is claiming we've got at least 3 downed craft that have been recovered. And the recent drone sightings all over the US and the UK, a lot of those sightings report this weird technology. More advanced technology which could have come from this UFO program. The Ministry of Defence says it has no opinion on the existence of
alien life forms have recognised the absolute chaos and banana-rama that's going on in this country and have come to save us, Alex. We're going to be saved.
Do you believe in UFOs?
I believe anything is possible because I don't know everything about the universe. So there must somewhere, in some time parallel universe maybe or whatever, my mind's open. Yeah.
Oh, I totally believe in them. Do you want to know sort of Alex existentialism?
Yeah, go on then.
Alex existentialism is what we'll call it. Do you like what I did there?
Yeah, I do.
So I've got this thing, like, if you were an ant living in a forest, all you would know are the bits of loam and the forest floor. You'd have no idea that you were in a forest in Madagascar, which is an island in the ocean off the coast of Africa, which is a continent, which is on planet Earth, which is in a solar system, which is in the Milky Way, which is just one of numerous galaxies in the whole universe. You just don't know.
Yeah.
And if you're a bacteria living on that ant's leg, you wouldn't even know you're on an ant. So how do we as humans know that we're at the very top? We could literally be the equivalent of plankton.
We could be a speck on a speck on a speck on a flower on a speck, and every multi-universe in the existence of everything could be tiny little specks in their own multi-universe. Who knows?
So
it's
there you
exciting.
go. Ergo, aliens. I love that story. Well done to the Daily Star. I kind of hope we do have them, and I really want to visit Porton Down. Cool stuff happens there. Anyway, I digress. Right, we're going to take another break now, but it's been a joy having your company for the first hour of the show. Hasn't it gone by quickly?
Gone so quickly.
Can't believe it. But there is still 3 more hours to go, so put the kettle on and I'll see you on the other side of these very short commercials. Don't go anywhere. Bye-bye. Hello, welcome back to the show, or welcome aboard if you've just tuned in. If you have, I don't blame you. You know, 7am is getting to be a little bit more of a sane and sociable time to wake up on a Saturday. But if you were with us since 6am, congratulations to you. Early bird catcheth the worm, and you would have missed out if you've only just joined us. 1 hour of unhinged fun, I would say. But you can, of course, catch up with a whole lot on YouTube. So if you, whatever time you're tuning into this show, perhaps you in the future who's watching it back on YouTube and hasn't even heard me say this, space and time weirdness, then you can go back and watch it from the very beginning. We can keep you company, whatever you're doing today. If you're tooling around on the allotment, driving to see a relative, getting the dinner on, or just relaxing in your garden, you can enjoy the full 4 hours on repeat as many times as you like. And any other show that we've ever done. The magic of online. So there you go. This whole thing is broadcast live on YouTube, where you can also watch it back and of course on the Talk app. And I'm joined by Belinda DeLucy, who, well, she is my Bezza.
We're sisters from another mister, to be fair.
Kind of cool being able to bring your best mate to work.
I'm very lucky.
We used to serve together in the European Parliament as the Brexit Party. And the very first time we clapped eyes upon each other.
It was love at first sight.
It was love at first sight.
I was very wary. I thought, gosh, you know, there's another girl on our table and the rest were chaps. You know, is she going to like me? I wanted to bring a packet of biscuits, custard creams or bourbons to make friends with you, but I didn't have any. So I think I helped you down the stairs.
Yeah, I was going to say, we did the ultimate girls thing, where this is how all females bond. When you look at another woman, you go, I like you and I want to be your mate, which is, I'm going to the toilet, are you coming?
Yes,
That's what we do. And I was on crutches at the time because I'd done in my ankle spectacularly and had my Meccano put in it. But it's like, can we go to the toilet together? And that was it.
That was it.
But the love was built, and it's lasted all this time. We've even got things like a little shared photo album on online.
And we're neighbours as well.
And
we're not
neighbours.
for long. You're going to leave.
Her. When I was moving to London, I literally got a house 2 roads up from her. Not creepy at all. Anyway, we are going to give you now a rundown of what is in the newspapers on this Saturday. Well, just the front pages. Here we go. We've already discussed this in the first hour. Front page of the Daily Mail. Smashing the gang's latest is this ridiculous deal that we've done with France. Well, the EU aren't going to approve it, and all the leftists and care for Calais and the lawyers and the immigration lawyers make loads of money from this sort of nonsense, and probably Lord Hermer himself are just going to make sure we don't even send back the 6% that we're supposed to.
And those
France.
that we do, by the way, can get back on boats and come back again. Even the 6% we send. But this is going to do nothing. I bet this time next year there'll be even more migrant crossings, because this has not only sent a message to the world that, oh, by the way, France is giving you another legal route how to get into the UK. They're still dangling massive carrots until they get rid of the blooming pull factor. You're going to risk it for 94% chance to get in.
Do you know where the migrants are in Calais? They're living under canvas, OK? They're in shanty towns, in tents and stuff like that, getting their bowl of gruel from some sort of leftist sympathiser. And then, of course, they want to come to the UK because they get a full-board hotel, drive-in lessons, a mobile phone, pocket money, a job at Deliveroo.
Dentists, doctors,
all
anything
of it.
you like.
Football tickets, PlayStations, yoga classes.
It needs to be none in and all out, bar a few very rare exceptions like women and small babies and things like that. But I think we should have a suspension on male asylum seeker applicants for like 10 years.
After the Second World War, when we had lots of Jewish refugees come here, and rightly so, they were given makeshift accommodation and were just so blimmin' grateful to be safe.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying that, you know, we should have given them less or anything like that, but I'm sorry, why is it that now men coming in from countries that hate us, who think stoning to death a woman is a national sport, are treated like they're blimmin' Madonna?
Well, that's why we should... I do think men seeking asylum should get help in UN camps on the continent and near where the wars or border or conflicts are, so they can be near the women, the wives, the sisters, the daughters they've run away from.
They don't want to look after their own.
And keep them there, because I think it's too much of a risk to have such huge numbers of unvetted men from deeply misogynistic, terror hotspot, violent nations that they don't even know who they are. We need to totally scrap the asylum system, start from scratch again, start focusing on UN camps and taking women and children from there, capping it at 10,000 a year maybe, and the rest, think how many more we could help help and how many more lives we could save at a fraction of the cost of the British taxpayer.
And I wouldn't mind if it was the women and the girls who are the ones being persecuted and oppressed and treated like scum back
By the
home.
men in their camps as well, by the way.
By the men in their camps, exactly. Ugh. Right, the Daily Star, the greatest paper of them all, it leads with a story that, get this, there's an organisation, a charity called Clowns Without Borders, which basically to me sounds like leftist clowns. They're demanding that we stop calling political people clowns because it's insulting to clowns.
Imagine how few problems you have to have in your life to worry about this. And they say they want them to be referred to as buffoons. I think that's an insult to buffoons. I can't think of a proper word to describe what's going on in Parliament for the last 2 decades, or to describe politicians and how they've let this country down. Treacherous knavery on a Shakespearean level, Alex.
There you
That's
go,
what's going on in Parliament.
Which is an insult to treacherous knaves, quite frankly, the world over. Talking about treacherous knaves, I don't care about this story at all, even though it's one of the greatest newspapers published on planet Earth, who shares this building. It's all about the fact that all of David Beckham's sons hate one another and hate the fact. I don't care.
Yeah, fair enough.
There you go.
Blue paper it is.
Right, here we go. The Mirror is talking about the fact that we've had a heat wave and so people are going to the beach.
I mean, can you even? Aren't they telling children it's like global boiling and to stay out of the sun, don't play sports when it's sunny because, death, Armageddon?
I'm sorry, is this supposed to be cutting-edge journalism? Look outside the window. There's something big and orange and fiery in the sky. Oh, that might mean it's OK to put on a swimming costume without getting hypothermia. Well done. Groundbreaking. Jeez, I love the fact that slid across the table.
Quite right.
Well, like, this one can slide across the table. Oh, actually, no, I quite like this headline. It's The Guardian, the Gorniad, which is that the union, Unite, is targeting Angela Rayner, is booted her out. She used to work for Unite back in the day, Big Ange. They booted her out, suspended her membership, and are going to war with the Labour Party because she basically suggested that the bin men of Birmingham should go and pick up bin bags to stop it becoming a third world hellhole. Frankly, I agree, but they don't. The unions, Belinda.
What are they for? Who are they for? They used to be. My great-great-grandpa was involved in employing 100,000 Chinese during the First World War. They were called the Chinese Labour Corps to come and help in the fields across Belgium and France with clearing all the shrapnel and driving all the machinery because there were so few, live Europeans left to do it.
Men left.
And France employed them and Britain employed them, and at the end of the war they wanted to stay. And it was the trade unions in the UK that denied the residency of these Chinese Labour Corps to take up home in England because of the influx cheap labour would have on struggling British men during a cost of living crisis after the First World War. That's what trade unions were supposed to stand for. Now they stand for, I don't know, the trans flag, climate change,
all these new religions that actually, the whole climate change thing, guess what? That messes up business. Net zero decimates prosperity. Men going into women's toilets, a lot of women in the workplace don't want to feel unsafe when they want to go use the netty. Again, you're not representing your workers. You're actually bowing down to the altar of weirdness.
And I think they're loving Binnageddon in Birmingham, where there are rodents of unusual size now sniffing around the mountains of festering bin juice. I think they're rather enjoying the decaying of once great industrial city because that's all they're sort of obsessed with. Everyone equal in their own misery. I think your trade unions need to remember who they're there to represent and what they're supposed to stand for. I think they're completely lost.
I actually quite like the fact they've had a bust-up with the Labour Party because I'm kind of hoping now they'll go and give their backing and their money and their finances and their hard left leverage to Magic Grandpa and Zara Sultana, the Fruit and Nut Party, or Jezbollah.
I think Jezbollah works.
But, I kind of hope that. I'd love to see a split on the left. So, all power to your elbow, I'd say to Unite. Keep going after Labour. Let's mess things up a bit. The Telegraph here, they're leading on the fact that the blimmin' water companies who can't do their job, they cannot patch up leaks, they put faeces in our rivers, they overcharge customers, they try and poison us. Nothing that water companies are supposed to do are they doing right, apart from paying their shareholders workers ridiculous amounts of money and their bosses big bonuses. And people like Thames Water, of course, in massive amounts of debt and need bailing out. Well, they've now got the audacity to introduce surge pricing. So when it gets hot, if you use your water, you're going to be charged even more.
Who is ever held to account, by the way? When things go wrong, when they mess up, when they mismanage money from councils to water companies, who's held to account?
No,
I don't get it.
Wrong.
It's always let's, strip more money out of the public purse, out off the backs of the British taxpayer, so we can muck up as much as we like, we can destroy the waters, we can put sewage in, and the British public will just pay for our mistakes each and every time with our institutions. And it's got to change, Alex.
Every time. Now, the Times has, it's leading on the doctors' strike. The junior doctors have proposed. 49% of the public oppose these walkouts. Medical leaders have warned that action is unjustifiable. We talked about that already. It's also got a picture of Sarah Poachin on the front here, looking kind of foxy, saying is she Nigel Farage's secret weapon.
What a lovely woman. I met her for the first time with you outside the Mog when we were toasting to our lovely friend.
I love the fact we just casually chucked that about. The Mog is this famous Brexity pub called the Marquis of Granby in Westminster, where sane folk who voted for our country's independence and involved in the worlds of politics and media congregate.
Yeah.
Still.
And this woman has a heart of a lioness. The courage on that lady, and she's such a girl's girl, a guy's girl. She's just an everyone kind of people, but very authentic, very strong, very brave. All power to her.
I'm sort of sick to death of this fetishisation of women in politics, as if it's like a brand new thing. And Rachel Reeves, the first female chancellor.
How embarrassing was that?
I know, we've
for
had
women.
3 female prime ministers already, and then at one point they just kept blowing smoke up the rear end of Jess Phillips. Isn't she brave? Isn't she amazing? No, she's a. But I don't mind people waving the flag for Sarah Poachin. Reform did need a female face. She's a solid lass. We like her. Anyway, big interview with her in the Times magazine today. I haven't read it, but I might steal it and read it when I come off air. Right, Daily Express. Well, again, this is almost as unimaginative as the Mirror's headline of "The sun is shining outside," but at least it is more connected to journalism and politics, which is "Workers will suffer a tax time bomb." Well, yeah, you don't say. Because
shock. It is Labour in charge.
Yeah, Lady Lego head Rachel Reeves can't add up. May as well have Diane Abbott in there instead. She'd probably do a better job with the abacus. Oh, Diane Abacus. That would be a fun quip, wouldn't it?
Yeah, that's a good one.
So there you are. Not much going on. It's a funny day for news, isn't it?
Yeah. I think they're reeling from the Macron-Keir slime show where Macron was dining out like a king on the backs of, obviously, the British taxpayer, while insulting half of the British population, sneering at Brexit, and in his arrogance, this sort of, it's the same, you didn't know what you voted for, you fools. Oh my God, it's just, I mean, goodness me, those two should go off and just have a little love child together and make him the king of Europe, and be done with it, but leave their nations alone. They're globalists, they don't belong in nation states.
That would be a sort of vile chimera, wouldn't it? what a love child. That would be a love child. That'd be a doom child, a hate child. And the Weekend says that the heat waves are going to drive the government to consider aircon grants for homes.
Oh, have they not heard of fans? Do you know how many little? No, I mean Chinese fans. Yeah, you don't have a few of those.
No, but also, first of all, it's net zero. We've got to save the planet. Well, putting in girt aircon systems is hardly going to cut the carbon footprint. And also, yes, it's been hot. Guess what I've done? This is, groundbreaking technology to make sure I'm not boiling up in my house. Here's my little tip. On a very, very hot day, keep your windows shut, because you don't want to let the hot air in from outside. Keep it cool inside. You don't open all the windows, because that actually warms up your home. And keep all your blinds and curtains drawn, and that way you'll find your home becomes a sort of tasty little cool shed of salvation.
And go to bed with wet hair. That's what I do. I don't know if that's healthy or not.
I didn't know that one. But the thing is, I wake up the next day looking like that lead singer, a top loader. So maybe not. But the other little tip I would give people is have a little fan, little electric fan to cool down the room. You don't need it on all night, just put it on to cool down the room. And as the ancient Greeks and the Romans did, what you have to do is fill up a jug of water, like an amphora, but bucket of water, anything, wash an up bowl of cool water, put it in front of your fan. That's air conditioning.
Yeah,
seriously, that is how it works. You don't need government grants to start
But it's
whacking
not
it
government
into...
grants. It's, again, another burden on the taxpayer. Let's take more money away from the cash you want to bring home to your family and give it to people. What? No.
We get excitable, don't we, that it's hot and it must be like apocalyptic and it's the hottest day in Wales since 50 years ago. Oh, my God, the sheep are toasting in their wool. Isn't it dangerous to everybody? Last summer, I don't think I saw the sun once.
No, I know. And 76 was hotter or the same. I mean, it's, you know, there's a lot of climate cycles alongside man-made climate change. You know, it's people need to chill out. I think there are catastrophe obsessive addicts. They just jump on any catastrophe to terrify, frighten the people because it controls them, Alex.
It does.
They like control.
They do like control. Right, let's do some messages before we go to break. Fantastic show, ladies. You are my heroes. Heroines. No, we don't care about our gender language stuff. We're not gendered. We gained equality in the 60s and 70s, and I'm furious to hear of your experience in London, my hometown. It's shocking. You can't be a woman in London anymore without second questioning your every single move.
And that was just two of many stories.
Am I going to be mugged?
But we keep getting told diversity is our strength, unconditional multicultural. Well, not all cultures are the same. I can say women will say from Afghanistan to Iran, from all over the world, not all cultures are the same.
Right.
It's an insult to the victims to say they are and to pretend like there's no culture shift happening in areas of the UK. And women, you know, are too scared to talk about it. That's why you and I, you know, have to come out with our lived experiences and try and be a bit braver about it. It's the first time I've ever talked about it.
Well, well done. I'm glad you shared. I think it's really important. I hope we're going to get that clipped up so more people can hear that story, because it's important. People need to understand the real life experiences of women and the things they're facing at the hands of this multicultural experiment. Alex, Belinda, looking fine, ladies, but I feel for you both. Yesterday at 16:25, myself and a colleague who are both UK veterans walked into something similar to what Belinda described on the Tottenham Court Road. Tent City. Suffice to say, they were persuaded to stop, but what troubled us was the number of men that just walked by. I assume what you're saying is the harassment of women that you were witnessing, and men just ignoring it.
Yeah, but I mean, I think the problem is, again, the climate is one of you can't do anything, you can't step in, you'll be called a racist, you'll be, you know, it'll be seen as stepping in to just harass and attack migrant, related people. It's not true. We're not saying there's no hate, there's no war against people who come here wanting a better life. I love smart immigration. My family is mixed race, mixed nationalities, and we are bonded by commonality and love, and we're all British. Unfortunately, reckless immigration and dangerous asylum systems has totally destroyed that. And now we're facing a cluster of disunited nations growing up, replacing what was our country. And many people feel we're witnessing the unmaking of England. And the only way we need to stop the train. We need to stop the train.
3 very quick messages before I get told off even more by Dean, who's nagging me in my ear. Wow, what a great combination of talent on your show this morning. Great to see Belinda again after so long, and it'd be great to see more of Belinda on Talk from Pam.
Thank you, Pam.
Please, more of Belinda. I totally agree. It's great for me, hanging out with my best mate. Alex, fab to see Belinda, says Richard in the Costa del Sol. We're not jealous.
Jealous.
I bet you're sitting there having a
sangria, baby.
Lager with your full English for like 99 cents. Wish I was there with you. Yeah, that'd be great. Alex, I shared a bus in Wellingborough with Belinda, and she is fab. Great show. More of Belinda, says David from Worcestershire. There you are.
That's so nice.
Isn't it?
It really makes a difference. It makes a difference because it can sometimes feel a bit lonely and a bit scary and a bit, and you get all these lovely comments and support, and really appreciate it.
Oh, my listeners are the best. Don't you forget that.
They are.
They make this show. Right, we're going to take a short break now, but don't go anywhere, because Belinda and I are going to be back after this. We're going to be talking about further developments in the post office scandal.
what we're talking about here, 50 a week, something like that.
Yeah, 50 to 50 a week. Yeah.
It's 50 a week. Okay. You said today there's about over 700.
We think 700 a day, 2,599 last week. Think about that.
So it's anything up to 1,000 a day, right, at the moment.
Yeah.
Now, how the hell have we got here? Because in 2018, it was around the number of migrants crossing the Channel was 299 for the year.
Hello there and welcome back to the show. Now, it's astonishing when such a disgusting scandal has been perpetrated against so many, as was carried out in the post office scandal, that there are still so many victims waiting for compensation. Men and women up and down the country falsely accused of nicking from the tills, of swindling the post office. Many ended up in prison, many even commit suicide. More than 900 sub-postmaster wrongly accused due to dodgy technology in Fujitsu's Horizon computer system. And they are owed tremendous amounts of money for the hell that they were put through, and yet they have to keep reliving the trauma by having to sort of submit in detail accounts and reports of why they're actually innocent, to all these people deciding whether or not they deserve compensation. They've got to come up with endless documents and evidence from 2 decades ago.
Why does it take so long for anything to happen in this country?
Let's speak to Christopher Head, OBE, who himself is a former sub-postmaster and was the UK's youngest sub-postmaster, aged just 18. Knocked 2 years off your life there, Christopher. Great to have you on the programme. Now, you were falsely accused of stealing more than £80,000 from your branch in West Bolton near Sunderland in 2006 before the criminal case against you was dropped. Have you received any compensation yet?
No, I mean, we've had interim payments that the government obviously have dashed out to everybody, but I mean, they're very small sums of money in comparison to what's being owed. And as you say, you have to jump through all these hoops so that the government agrees to pay for your experts. You know, they agree to pay for the lawyers, they agree to pay for the forensic accountants and medical experts. And then you submit the claims to them, and then they say, well, we don't like all them figures that them independent experts have put together, so we'll offer you 10%.
What? So they're now trying to shortchange you from the compensation you were promised and give you only 1/10 of it.
Yeah, I mean, that's how it starts out, isn't it? So, I mean, the rhetoric from Westminster and the post has always been that we're going to provide full and fair compensation. Well, you know, full and fair has to be what the independent experts say the figure is. And then they come out and they offer you, said, you know, maybe 10% or 12%, 15%. And then you challenge back and say, well, that's not good enough, and you give the reasons why. And then they come back, you know, 2 or 3 months later and say, well, tell you what, we'll give you 20% now. And, you know, I've been in that process for 2 years since the beginning of June 2023, and I'm up to about just over 36%.
I mean, I just shouldn't be an exercise like this. The horrors of, I cannot imagine what it is like for someone to accuse you, especially your age, you're 18, a young man, being accused of stealing £80,000. You know it's not you. The anguish, the sense of injustice, the desperation, the hopelessness of thinking, I've done nothing wrong.
And at the very start of your career, how cruel to do that to an 18-year-old, thinking that, you know, that's it, where am I going to go from here after this slander of your name? I'm so sorry.
And, you know,
yeah, I mean, the biggest problem is that you can't, because the post office was obviously once known as the most trusted brand, you know, everybody was like, there's no smoke without fire. So it's very, very hard to set that aside, to kind of say, you know, you knew you're innocent and you're trying to prove that. You know, the government were trying to say, well, you know, after a few years, everybody knew, but they didn't. It was only after the end of the drama that the wider public was it was brought to their attention. And obviously only now that people really understand the scale of actually what went on. And slowly you're able to rebuild your reputation.
Right, and the horror story, the mental torture of being accused of such a big crime, fearing, being scared when you go to bed at night every single day of your life that you're going to be put in prison for a very long time for something you just didn't do. In total, 59 people told the inquiry that they'd contemplated suicide. 10 attempted to make take their own lives. The inquiry chair has said that whilst I cannot make a definitive finding there's a causal connection between the deaths, I do not rule out that there's a real possibility. But the names of only 2 sub-postmasters who did tragically take their own lives were made public in evidence given to the inquiry, but other victims remain unnamed. Reports of suicides linked to the scandal essentially being covered up. This is horrifying.
I mean, obviously I look at it and it says, you feel like even though you've gone through a horrendous thing, you feel like one of the lucky ones, because you've seen these people that you say taking their own lives. I think, we saw in the Sunday Times just a couple of weeks ago that I think there's 350 people died, over the course of this before even seeing any kind of redress or justice.
350 out of what, 900 who we know falsely.
Well, I think the scale's far bigger. If you look at the numbers that's actually applied for compensation in total, the number's over 10,000.
Wow.
So you've got 9,800 people that's applied in the biggest scheme, the HSS.
Do you think there are any people not applying for compensation just because of the hassle and the delay and the length of it all, and they just want the chapter over?
That's absolutely, definitely true. I have a contact with a huge amount of people on X that obviously have come forward and said, look, I can't get my family member to apply. I can't get, my son or my daughter to apply because they're so terrified, one, to relive the trauma, but secondly, they're seeing what other people are going through, a 2-year, 3-year, 4-year, 5-year process.
That's so
and not
awful
getting what they do.
That's awful that the process has had that impact on people who deserve compensation because they've made it so awful for you. I'm so ashamed. And is anyone being held to account? Isn't Fujitsu not even, going to be the source of the compensation?
No, we heard at the Business and Trade Committee last year that obviously the actual compensation process is actually making people more ill than what it was before they started it. And then with regards to holding people to account, Fujitsu have said that they have a moral obligation to contribute, but they won't do anything until the reports come out. And like people say, well, if the bill so far is estimated at 1.8 billion, and you think that they designed the software, if they were really genuine about doing something, you would come along and say, right, well, there's 500 million, we'll give you, something.
Well, they should pay, in my mind, they should pay the whole 1.8 billion. Yes, I know it's a government-owned company, that it's a state-owned entity, the Royal Mail, but at the same time, that essentially means Belinda and I and all the taxpayers who had nothing to do with it are going to be paying, which you do need compensation. God, of course you do. But where are Fujitsu in all of this? They're still trading. They're still paying their shareholders. They're still, chalking up massive profit margins. It makes me sick. Sick to the back.
They're still winning huge government contracts. You saw a few weeks ago they're winning another contract for £340 million from HMRC.
Oh, well, so they're being rewarded. They're being rewarded. Yeah. Wow. Well, that's the government for you. That's the state of Westminster, pretty much.
Before we let you go, Chris, what was it like for you when you were accused of stealing £80,000?
Well, we'd already had shortfalls over the years, but they were so minor. And obviously, when figures like that show up on the system, I think it started out at 40, and within a month, so similar to what you saw on the drama, it doubled to £80,000. You kind of, at first, you just laugh because you think this is, it has to be a mistake. It just can't. The money hasn't gone out the door. There's only me that's working in there, and obviously we didn't hold that much money. But then it starts, when the auditors come in and then they accuse you, and then they take you off down to a solicitor's office. And they read you all your rights and they tell you, that anything will be used against you in court. And then that's when you realise it's, a hell of a lot more serious than what you originally thought. And that just went on for such a long period of time. And it was 6 or 7 months, that part of the investigation. And then they dropped that about a week later and they said, but we still want our money back. So we're not going to prosecute you because there's no evidence and we don't think anyone's done anything wrong, but we still want our £80,000 back. So now we're going to take you to the civil courts. And that went on for another 3.5 years. And it was only because of the court case that, Sir Alan Bates, as a group of 555 started in 2016-17, that they agreed to set my case aside pending the outcome of that case. But that meant it was still over my head all that period of time. We didn't know the outcome of that court case until the end of 2019. So it's had a massive impact on me, being so young, on my family.
It would have made me ill with anguish. It would have made me ill with anguish.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, you know, you try to stay strong. Obviously, I've done a lot of campaigning, and obviously we received the OBE for that and all of that stuff. But that's because you're trying to divert the attention away from the impact that's having on yourself. And I found the best way to do that was to try and help other people.
Wow.
Yeah, you're brilliant, brilliant, brilliant man. Christopher Head, OBE, former sub-postmaster, and was the UK's youngest sub-postmaster, aged 18. Every time I'm reminded of that story, I'm horrified.
It's shocking
by it.
that humans can sleep at night after treating people like that, making the process so difficult, so long, it actually causes mental trauma.
We live in this hyper society where we think that wouldn't happen in Britain. No,
not anymore.
I mean, it's shocking.
We'll get it back. We'll get it back. I'm full of hope.
Oh, right, we're going to be taking a short break now, but when we come back, we're going to be discussing that dodgy deal with President Macron of France about the one in, one out, and who is to blame for the UK's migrant crisis. We're actually going to be joined by an immigration lawyer. That's coming up after this. So there you go. It wasn't long before Macron and Sir Keir Starmer made their little deal that we're going to be able to send some migrants back to France in return for people legally applying who have family in the UK and therefore have a right to come here. Do they? And this one in, one out system, where actually only about 6% of people have crossed the channel illegally, will end up being taken back to France, if at all, because the EU are looking at whether this is legal according to their made-up laws. And various other activists and charities and NGOs all ready to tool up these people with migration lawyers to make sure they're not sent back to France. I mean, what? Yeah, that was my thought on the lot of it. So I'm going to put that question now to an immigration lawyer. Ivan Sampson, welcome to the show, Ivan. I mean, come on, we cannot have this situation where we constantly just have people coming into the country illegally, who have not gotten visas, who frankly don't have a right to be here, somehow manage to like pull the wool over people's eyes and claim they do, chucking their passports into the sea. We can't have this. It is dangerous. It is against national security. But it seems to me now that various charitable campaigners want to make sure that the people who we might be able to send back to France due to this deal between Starmer and Macron won't be sent back to France because they'll be given the assistance of lawyers like you. Would you take on those cases?
First of all, you need to get the language right. And I was glad to see that Prince Charles in his speech when he held the state banquet didn't talk about illegal migration. He said it was irregular. Keir Starmer in his speech also said that it wasn't illegal migration, it was irregular. And you've got to get your language right. most people coming across the channel
No. I don't like all this watering down terminology. As far as I'm concerned, if I wanted to go to a country like Pakistan and try to walk over the border from India without a visa, I'd probably get shot because it'd be breaking the law of the land. You cannot just come into a country with no visa, having paid criminal people traffickers and chucked your documents into the ocean and just say, oh, sorry, it's a bit irregular. It's not the normal route. I just fancy doing it a different way.
Well, you being an unqualified person on immigration law would say that. I being a qualified person would say differently, as would the judges and the courts.
But that's not the problem. This is why we've got. It's why we've got this problem. It's because of stuff like that. Yeah.
I'm telling you about the law. This is the law. People coming across the channel are not illegal if you're going to come claim asylum. That's the law. Whether you like it or don't like it, that is the law. And Prince Charles and Keir Starmer recognise that. Now, this is the problem. Before Brexit, there was a mechanism to return people. It was called the Dublin Convention.
Which is totally unworkable. In Angela Merkel's own words. Angela Merkel's own words said the Dublin Agreement is unworkable. Can you imagine France and Germany? Are they sending all their illegal migrants back to Greece and Italy now? Of course they're not. In fact, what the EU's doing now is forcing EU member states to take huge quotas of illegal migrants on threat of €1 million a day in punishment, the opposite of Dublin Agreement. So that, quite frankly, is a red herring.
Well, I didn't talk about whether it's workable. I said there was a legal mechanism called the Dublin Convention. Okay. This new policy is a mechanism again. So I welcome it. I welcome it because it's a start. Before, there was no legal mechanism to returning, well, no mechanism, I'll come on to legal, for returning people. The problem is there's no legal footing to this. So France could renege on all this, and there's nothing we can do about it. And I'd be surprised if there wasn't a backroom deal with shoving more money to France. You see, it's in France's interest to send people over here. Yeah. It's in their interest to send 50,000 people over here because they don't have to look after them in France. But this is no holiday for France either. They don't want these people in France. The only thing that's going to resolve is not a treaty with France, but an EU-wide treaty that has a legal footing that we can take France to the ECJ and to the Strasbourg courts rather, if they don't stop the boats. Now, the only people that can stop the boats are France. This policy will not. Most migrants don't know about this policy. They wouldn't even care. Yeah. They're still going to come.
Yeah. Well, no, I totally agree. It's as if, you know, this press conference, everyone thinks that, you know, the men, you know, camping in Cali are looking at their phones going, oh, well, you know, now I've seen this press conference, I better not get on a dinghy. It's absolutely for the birds. My problem is the EU have always been very intransigent on this point and said we're going to have a situation where we're going to just dole out all these asylum seekers based upon your per capita, and doesn't matter the fact that we haven't managed our own frontiers, doesn't matter the fact that we've stripped all the borders from within the continent under the Schengen Acquis, so we don't know who's coming in. Doesn't matter that it was Angela Merkel who stood there going, refugees welcome, inviting everybody in. You've now all got to carry part of the burden. And the British people with Brexit didn't vote for that.
No, they didn't. And I agree with you, they didn't. Look, the Western countries like the UK will need to make really difficult decisions. Decisions that Western countries don't normally make. They're going to be decisions like, we're going to remove you with no right to appeal. Mm-hmm. We're going to remove you because we don't think you have a genuine claim, and we're going to send you back to the country whence you came from. That is the only solution. You see, sending them to France is not going to work. All that's going to mean is France is going to have the problem. So we've got to look at each country in isolation. Take a Syrian refugee. We need to remove a Syrian refugee back to Syria. If we can do that, they will not come over. If they know that having come to the UK, they're going to end up back in their own country, they're not going to leave Syria in the first place. And let me tell you, most refugees don't come to the UK. 99.9% go across the border in a conflict and wait there until the conflict is over. And so countries like Pakistan and Jordan have 1 million refugees. You know, so you have to remember, very few people actually make that journey to the UK. I don't accept that having a family member in the UK gives you the right to come to the UK.
Agree. Mm.
We should treat each application on its merits. But look, we need to take a little. We can't just reject every genuine refugee. We're a Western civilized nation. We drafted the convention. So we need to take our fair share.
Yeah, but the
What that
convention
is,
has
that's sort of-
morphed into a totally different beast now. And to be quite honest, I think the problem we have is we're a tiny island in comparison, and very highly... England is one of the most highly populated, you know, land masses in the whole of the EU. We simply can't take huge numbers. We haven't got the housing, we haven't got the money. We also, I think, are very wary of some of the unvetted, you know, men coming from very, very different cultures, war-torn, terror hotspot areas. Surely it's better to amend international law or to scrap it altogether and to focus asylum help on the UN camps on the continent where the conflict is, instead of this crazy resettlement programme, and maybe just resettle 10,000 a year in the UK, maybe only women and babies. That would be safe for Brits, fair on the taxpayer, and would be helping more people in the camps and saving more lives. Would you support something like that?
I think you're absolutely right. I think what you said makes sense, and the law actually reflects that, because before, when I first started asylum, if you were a refugee, you were given indefinite leave to remain instantly. That doesn't happen now. You get a 5 years worth of leave, and if the situation in your country gets better in that time, you can be removed. This is the problem, the Human Rights Act, because these people then have relationships, have children. And because of that, you cannot then remove them to their country. So I think we need to look at the Human Rights Act, and in particular, Article 8. That needs to be looked at. Look, there's lots of the Human Rights Act, which is fantastic. Right to life, right not to have inhumane, degrading treatment, right to freedom. You journalists enjoy that through the Human Rights Act. But I think Article 8, we need to look at that. It's being abused by a number of people.
Yeah, can I ask you, talking about things being abused by a number of people, do you ever have people cross your threshold saying, I want to stay in Britain, will you represent me, who you kind of get the sense of swinging the lead?
I don't. I'm a high-end lawyer. Most of my clients are really well-known political refugees. So I don't do any legal aid. I don't deal with any clients coming across the channel at all. Unless I've been accused of making millions from them, but I don't. I'm just telling you now. I don't have a single client. So I look after very high-end well-known political figures who are coming here for genuine refugee status.
Yeah, I think most Brits kind of support that, you know, Salman and Rushdie type persecuted.
Yeah, we looked after Navalny, given half the chance,
as long
we?
as they don't have sort of terrorist
That was the purpose of the Refugee Convention. You see, when the Refugee Convention was drafted, it was people like Salman Rushdie. I've got a couple of Russians fleeing the Putin government. It was that sort of people that the Refugee Convention was supposed to help. And not if you're in an armed conflict or a civil conflict, and then 80 million people who are displaced at the moment can come to the UK. They cannot.
Yeah. No, truth of the matter is actually a lot of people in horrible war-torn countries such as Sudan actually don't get the opportunity to leave. Actually, it tends to be sort of more of the middle classes who've got the money to drum up to pay the traffickers in order to lubricate their passage. Ivan, thank you so much. You've shone a light brilliantly on the situation. It's been wonderful to have your candour and your expertise. That is Ivan Sampson, a high-end immigration lawyer.
My pleasure.
Not just any old immigration lawyer, a high-end immigration lawyer.
Very impressed.
If Heineken made immigration lawyers, they would all be Ivan Sampson.
Although I'm never calling them irregular migrants.
I still don't like the word irregular. I don't even care if it's not the correct terminology. It's like one of those things that, you know...
And the law is an ass. The law is an ass. All this, but it's not legal, and international law puts the rights and safety of paedophiles, rapists, terrorists above the rights and safety of the British public. International law has become dangerous. It is outdated. Which party will be strong enough to get rid and amend, only Reform UK.
There you go, little political plug from Belinda there. Now, do you want to speak to one of our audience? Do you want to meet someone?
Yeah, I'd love to.
Yeah? Yeah, say hi to Ricky, who's in London.
Hi, Ricky.
Morning, Alex. Morning, Alex. Morning, Belinda.
Good morning.
Good morning, my darling. Right, what is on your mind?
A couple of quick points, very quick points, but a very serious one at the end. Belinda mentioned the UN safe camps earlier on. They were UN safe havens. Anyway, that's just that out of the way. Regarding Ivan, about taking our fair share, we've took our fair share, and look at the state of the country. Yeah. Get in to walk through Brent, okay?
Oh, don't you get me started on Brent. Right. You know that triggers me.
He's a high-end lawyer. He's a high lawyer. Would he be a high-end lawyer in Pakistan or wherever he come from? Right, so he talks rubbish. Laws can be changed, and we'll change them. and we'll put an end to all this madness. So just one more really important thing.
Yeah.
Something really interesting is happening in our society, Alex, regarding free speech and Palestine Action Group. As we know, they've been prescribed. So what we're seeing now, what I used to say, I've rung up previously on talk when you've had the police come round to your house because you said hurty words and things like that. I used to say to some presenters, I said, well, why don't we all send that tweet? Because they can't lock us all up, right? So what we're seeing now is something very, very interesting, because now we're going to see that actually with Palestine Action Group, what we're going to see over the next weeks and months, what they're going to do, they're going to come out in great numbers and say, we are Palestine, we support Palestine Action. Now, that is in direct defiance of this country's laws. And they're doing it on the basis that they can't lock us, we can't...
Oh, right, like sort of a strength in numbers, and more of them who say, you can't arrest us all because there's too many of us.
So they're coming out in great numbers, in direct defiance of our laws, testing that principle.
Yeah.
It's never been tested before, Alex.
No, I'm sure you're right. The thing is, it's great, they're prescribed, fantastic, but, various other organisations are prescribed that people still wave their flags on those pro-Palestine marches. The reason why Palestine Action prescribed, and the security services advised the government back in March that this organisation had reached the threshold by which it should be deemed terrorist, not because of their words and their flags and their political opinions, but because they were actually planning to tool up with weapons and attack institutions and people. That is why they have been prescribed. And I think what is disgusting is the Labour Party delayed the prescription until after the local elections, so it wouldn't upset people. I mean, it's so venal.
They'll only regroup, rename. There's no actual proper consequence. There's no prison spaces left because our incompetent governments haven't built enough prisons. So, I mean, they're letting out serious violent criminals, only serving 30% of their sentence. It's no deterrence for, things, people like Hamas was Palestinian Action, because they know, well, there's nowhere to put us. So, I would just say, I would like to say thank you. The guest before you, actually, the immigration lawyer, was good enough to come on the show and
explain stuff
and
to
where
us.
he comes from probably isn't important, but I think he's British.
Indeed. Ricky, thank you for your call, my darling. And Belinda, did you realise it's time up?
Yay! Well, not yay. Sorry, I meant to say.
Yay! I've had enough now. I want to go
home. I've enjoyed it so much. I bathe in your warmth and your sparkle and your glitter and your bubbles. I wish you could bottle it and sell it, because I'd buy it. Absolutely lovely. I meant, yay! Hasn't it gone well? And I've had such a lovely time.
That'd be a strong tasting shot. That'd make absinthe look like a weakling's drink. Righto. Well, listen, that was Belinda DeLucy, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you enjoyed her company as much as I have this morning. But sadly, we have to say goodbye, because when we come back after the break, it's musical chairs. We're going to be having Will Hobbs, the TalkSport reporter, to give us all the latest from Wimbledon. It is the final weekend, and what is going on at Red Bull? That's after this.
what we're talking about here, 50 a week, something like that.
Yeah, 50 is 50 a week. Yeah.
It's 50 a week. OK. You said today there's about over 700.
We think 700 a day, 2,599 last week. Think about that.
So it's anything up to 1,000 a day, right, at the moment.
Yeah.
Now, how the hell have we got here? Because in 2018, it was around the number of migrants crossing the channel was 299 for the year.
Hello, welcome back. Well, it is a big old sporting weekend this weekend because it is the Wimbledon final. I'm joined by Will Hobbs, TalkSport reporter.
Hello.
Who's in it? Because I don't follow tennis, so who's in it?
We've got the women's final today. Iga Swiatek, she was the world #1. She's won 4 French Opens. She's never won Wimbledon. And then it's a first ever Grand Slam final. She's from Poland.
Right.
And then we've got an American, Amanda Anisimova, 23-year-old. She was a great junior. She was brilliant when she was 17. She was the youngest French Open semi-finalist in a long time. She got to the semi-final at age 17. Had a long dip since then. 2023 took a long break from the sport. 2024 didn't even qualify for Wimbledon, and now she's in the final. She beat the world #1, Aryna Sabalenka, last round. So a real comeback from Amanda Anisimova.
So that's the Disney story, basically.
I think so.
If you're going to get stuck into someone, it's her, because that's a really cool narrative.
Yeah. If you like an underdog, go with Anisimova. She's probably better suited to grass as well. I think that one of the beauties of tennis is you've got the 3 different surfaces. And some of the greats, you know, the Nadals, the Federers, the Djokovic's, they're so great because they were the best on all of them, even though there's such different styles. But in the women's game, I think there's a lot more specialists. So Swiatek is definitely a clay specialist, a bit of a slower court. That's why she's won the 4 French Opens. But she's never really done it at Wimbledon. Whereas Anisimova, she's a real power hitter, and she's had a few good runs at Wimbledon previously, but this is by far her biggest, so it should be a bit of a fascinating one. And then tomorrow, of course, you've got Jannik Sinner, the world #1, against Carlos Alcaraz. And in the French Open about a month ago, they staged one of the great Grand Slam finals. It took 5 hours for Carlos Alcaraz to beat him over 5 sets, and that will be the first final in 8 Wimbledons that doesn't feature Novak Djokovic, who lost in straight sets to Sinner.
I like Novak. I wanted Novak to get... He's like 1,000 years old now, isn't he, for a sportsman?
38,
He's like Methuselah.
yeah.
I know, it says Alex, age 41. But that's sort of long in the tooth, isn't it, if you're in tennis?
And do you know what? He said that it was a bit of a reality check facing Sinner and losing in straight sets, because he'd never lost to Sinner at Wimbledon. And he says now that age 38, he gets to these semi-finals, gets to these latter stages, and he's playing with a tank half empty against, when you've got Sinner 23, Alcaraz 22. They're just so much younger than him, like 16 years younger than him.
Yeah.
So it is amazing that he's still doing battle with these guys, but he's now reaching semi-finals rather than finals, and I think we're seeing the gradual decline. But he is the greatest of all time. He's won more Grand Slams than anyone else, and he is the GOAT, and he's still going and he's still competing, but he just admits he's not able to get to that next level right at the end of slams.
Now, I've got to let you go in about 50 seconds to go and do the headlines.
Should we hit lines? Rugby?
Let's just do... Well, I was going to do the Formula 1 gossip, but let's do rugby instead.
Bish, bash, bosh. It's the last warm-up game before the test. Owen Farrell, big story. He's on the bench for the Lions. His dad's obviously picked him, even though he hasn't played for about a year at the top level. Henry Pollock, these last chances for these players to make a claim for the test matches. They're playing against an Australia-New Zealand combined team, a few All Blacks in there who are really good players, but it's a team that's been thrown together. So the Lions will be hoping they can score loads of tries, and these players put their hands up because it's their last chance.
Apparently, I've still got about 30 seconds to ask you what is going on at Red Bull. I love it because I'm a Formula 1 aficionado.
Of course.
Jos Verstappen's won, basically, hasn't he? He hated Christian Horner.
Exactly.
All those sexting scandals and all the rest of it. He thought he'd survived it.
Well,
unceremoniously booted.
Well, when the car's not winning, ultimately you're going to have to go. That's the point. While they were winning, it was fine, all these texting scandals, wasn't it? And then until the McLarens and the others get past them, now it's all gone. Christian Horner, I believe, is still on the payroll, though. He's still being paid £9 million a year. He's still employed by Red Bull. He's on his extended gardening leave, so I'm not sure what's going on there.
Who's replacing him?
So he's still doing OK. I don't think they've lined up a replacement full-time yet, so we'll be waiting to see. But it just goes to show, it's all about results, isn't it?
It is all about results.
He was cleared. He was cleared by the internal investigation, all of that kind of shady stuff behind the scenes. That was all cleared, but if you're not winning, you're out.
There you go. Will, thank you ever so much. A brilliant summary of all the headlines in the sporting world. Now you better go and do your own bulletin. You have to crawl on your hands and knees under the camera, because that is the classy operation we have here. So while I look down the barrel, you can imagine that Will is grooming along the floor like he's on some army obstacle course so he doesn't appear in shot. And so what I'm going to do... There he goes. Look at that. That was, honestly, he should be an athlete himself. That was very nimbly done, can I just say. My age, I couldn't do that. My knees were hurt for a week. Let's do some messages then before we hit up the top of the adverts. Morning, Alex. I normally wake up and listen to your show on the radio, but this morning, having heard a new voice, I thought I'd take a look at who your co-presenter was, and all I can say is, wow, I thought I'd died and gone to heaven. There were two beauties looking down on me. She is a hot piece of posterior, ain't she, that Belinda DeLucy? Even I fancy her. Who wouldn't? Good morning, gorgeous ladies. Alex, we pronounce in Wales as Penturk, says David, my good mate in South Wales. So diolch yn fawr to David. Thank you for that. That's the thing with Welsh. You just need some more vowels. You know, what is wrong with A, E, I, O and U? Why do you have to get out all the niche letters like W's and Y's, chuck them all together and expect us to know how you say them? Could the Mayor of London be deliberately making London a hellhole to drive out indigenous people for the benefit of migrants, says Mick. I don't think he's that bright or that scheming, and he's not the one who actually controls immigration. But what I would say is he doesn't stand up for the sort of native population who, by and large, have left London and are doing so in droves. Over 11,000 millionaires have left London in the past 12 months alone. Ridiculous. Now, going to take another advert break, but don't go anywhere, because joining us after the break is the fantastic, unequalled deputy and US editor of The Spectator, Freddie Gray, to take us through all of the weekend's big news stories. Put the kettle on, put your feet up, don't go anywhere. I'm back after this. and welcome back to the show, or welcome aboard if you've only just tuned in. And if you have, I don't blame you, because it is a little bit uncivilised being up at 6 o'clock in the morning at a weekend. But if that was you and you tuned in from the beginning, wasn't Belinda de Lucy just awesome? I have had such a great first 2 hours to this programme. I mean, yes, it's all good and well being paid to just hang out with your best mate and, you know, chew the cud, talk shop. It's a real privilege to be in that position, I must say. But the audience has loved her. So many messages coming in saying how excellent she was. Don't worry, we're going to get her back because she loved it as well. And the convenience is Belinda lives a couple of streets up from me. So I was able to go hammering on her door at the wee small hours this morning. Get your butt into this car. Off we go to the studios. And we were full of vim and vigour. And what a fantastic guest she has been. But let's keep that quality high, shall we? Because that's what we want to do. We want to deliver you the best breakfast platter in British broadcasting here in Talk Towers. We don't want to disappoint, which is why we are now going to be joined by one of the best in the biz, a man I admire. He is the deputy and US editor of The Spectator, the fantastic Freddie Gray. Good morning, Freddie, and welcome to the show.
Good morning, Alex. Well, that's quite a billing. I better try and live up to it.
Are you sitting at the bottom of a well? You're very dark, but don't you worry about that.
I'm in my shed. I'll get my background light on.
Yeah, no, don't worry. We'll just we'll just sort of like gaze at you in the distance. You're sort of like a silhouette of a man. We can sort of vaguely see some eyebrows. But don't you worry. We can just imagine how handsome you are instead. Let's talk about the migrant deal. Or the deal. I mean, come on, like Sir Keir Starmer and deal are not two words that belong in the same sentence, quite frankly. It seems to me this mad idea that, you know, France are willing to take back, is it, what, 6% of all the people who come into the country illegally, as long as we take the equivalent number of people from France by agreement, legally, it's not going to actually move the needle or reduce the numbers. It's not going to be any sort of deterrent. And what's more, the EU are now going, yeah, we don't think we're going to allow you to do that. The NGOs going, yeah, we're going to make sure that all the people you try and return to France are lawyered up. I mean, it's just, to me, this is the biggest gimmick of all gimmicks.
Yes, well, exactly. It's not going to work. And even if it were going to work, it would not be a good deal. It would not be a good arrangement. I strongly suspect that the French negotiators and officials who took part in this deal are giggling and laughing to themselves about how badly the British side handled it. Starmer was desperate for a win, we were told. You know, after several major own goals, we thought the government thought that it would have positive headlines that would help it. It hasn't. It's a deal that strikes everyone who takes just a quick look at it as a terrible, terrible arrangement. It will not stop the boats, and it will lead to worse or even more intensive waves of boats. So and I mean, another aspect of this deal, which is obvious, is that the fact that on the day the deal was going to be signed, the people smugglers who run these boats used to be quite, you know, they would be alert to the news and they would say, you know, obviously on this day it wouldn't be a good look to have lots of boats going across. In fact, on Thursday, as the deal was being announced, there was a large number of boats going across because the weather was favourable. They're laughing at us. The French are laughing at us. It is. We do seem to have a government that is addicted to humiliating itself and therefore the country.
Oh, no, I totally agree. It's almost sadomasochistic. I wasn't planning to ask you about this, but, you know, hey-ho, live radio, what happens, happens. I was reading the other day something astonishing about Lord Hermer, who I actually think is the root of all evil in this government. Of course, Starmer's leftist mate from his chambers of yore, who basically uses international law to stop us doing anything in national interest, not just as our Attorney General, but basically he's made a career out of it for most of his life, it seems. I found out the other day he changed provisions, so anything decided in cabinet by a minister has to be run past him so he can make sure that it accords with his interpretation of international law first. This man is some sort of megalomaniac.
He's a megalomaniac, and he seems to be a megalomaniac who hates this country and much prefers international law to Britain or British law or British society. And say what you want about Emmanuel Macron, he is awful in many ways. And the French people dislike him intensely. But when he operates on the international stage, he is acting, maybe wrong-headedly, but he is acting in what he believes is the French national interest. And he is trying to get the best deal for France as he sees the possibilities ahead of him. This government seemed to do the complete opposite. They seem to prioritise international law. They seem to prioritise France's needs on migrants ahead of ours. I mean, it is almost mind-blowing how bad this government is, and it's mind-blowing how Starmer and Hermer and this respect for concepts of international law comes miles ahead of anything else, when no other country really does that.
Right, well, talking about that and this concept of international law, France, just like us, is a signatory to all the various treaties and pacts and supranational governance that we are, the ECHR, UN, this, that and the other conventions, so on and so forth. And yet, all these men who congregate on the coast of Calais are in tents in the sand dunes, eating the odd bowl of gruel handed out by some sort of leftist do-gooder. And yet when they come to the UK, they're given everything they could ever dream of. An all-inclusive hotel, pocket money, a job in the black market. How on earth is it that in France they go, do you know what, you're not supposed to be here, canvas is the best you're going to get, make it work, in somewhere that it doesn't have a completely different climate to the UK. On a good day, you can see France from Dover. It is exactly the same climate in Normandy as the southeast of England. And yet, as soon as they get to the UK, they get better than I could have ever dreamed of. You know, if someone said to me, here you go, do you want to break into Lanzarote and be given 2 years of a hotel with a buffet and some pocket money, and you don't have to work, but if you want to, we'll turn a blind eye while you pull some pints in the bar so you can have even more cash, I'd be like, yes, why would I not do that? And I'm not even, I mean, look, someone could say that I'd be a refugee given how terrible the situation is in Britain right now, but it's an amazing deal for anybody, isn't it? How can we do that and France doesn't?
Well, I think it taps into this sort of deep self-hatred, or this strange urge to put the law ahead of, or our understanding of international law ahead of what's right or good for British people. The French police don't do that. I mean, I go to my mother's from France. I go to the south of France quite a lot, where she's from, and she's right on the border with Italy. And you see the migrants coming across, and they are just sort of shuffled all day long between, it's like ping pong with migrants between the Italian police and the French police. And it's horrible for the migrants. They're just sort of bustled back hither and thither. But that's because both police forces, both authorities don't want them. On the English side of the equation, we do seem to just accept them. And we don't push back. And, you know, we do have this maritime border, which should be an advantage, but somehow we've managed to turn it into a disadvantage as a border situation. Yeah, we are very, very bad at handling this problem. And this government in particular, with its focus on international law, is particularly terrible.
It was a crazy precedent to set where we started beatifying these people and give them hotel rooms, and now we're giving them houses in the private sector. I mean, Lord knows what some of these men are going to get up to when they're there twiddling their thumbs 24 hours a day in a free house with their pocket money and their dodgy black market work. I mean, it's inviting disaster. I just think we need to get real and make like the French and build a massive blimmin' camp, probably in Northern Ireland, close to the border of Ireland, which of course is in the EU, and go, if you don't like it in this accommodation, oh look, if you walk in that direction for a couple of miles, you can go back and try your luck with Brussels instead. Let's talk about the doctors' strike, because they seem to be people who are trying their luck. Junior doctors were given a 29.9% pay rise already by the government. Many junior doctors, even if they're quite early in their profession, by doing locum work and out of hours and clocking up the doctor miles, are earning about 100 grand a year, and yet they're going to go on strike. They're going to conduct a walkout because they want another 29% on top of that. And some very senior figures have quit the BMA going, this is ridiculous. You're pulling our chain now. This is going to directly harm patients. And yet for what? This is bordering on greedy. What do you make of it?
I think something very strange has happened at the BMA. I think it's gone from being a fairly standard left-wing union to a really radicalised, quite dangerous one. I think actually very dangerous one when you think about what doctor strikes can do. They can actually cause deaths. And the public are, this time, much more sick of their actions than they have ever been before. And they're now called resident doctors, not junior doctors. They have had these pay rises, quite substantial particularly if you look at most private sector pay rises. It's a terrible idea. I think Wes Streeting, who is one of the only people with a functioning brain inside government, is suggesting that they tap into their pension. So they say to doctors, okay, you can be paid more now, but you won't be paid more later, which I think is a smart idea, because one of the great benefits about being a doctor is you actually get a pretty good pension. And maybe we should say that to all public sector workers. Yes, we can pay you more now if you want more, but you won't get such a gold-plated pension later. And I think that is a good idea.
I think that's perfectly fair enough. I mean, weren't they granted sort of a tax exemption on their pensions even if they're over £1 million? I mean, this is the thing. You go to be a doctor and you work hard in the early stages of your career. We're not saying that these doctors are sitting around doing nothing and they're lazy and they're feckless and they're egotistical. What doctors are, though, are people who, yes, they do work hard, but later in life they really get to profit from that experience, from that expertise in the private sector, out of hours clinics, especially as consultants. They stand to make a lot of money and they know this. It just, to me, it really does seem deeply unpragmatic at a time that we all know how weak and flimsy our economy is. But talking about unions and how radicalised the BMA have got, what do you make of Labour's war with Unite? The union has chucked out Angela Rayner for failing to back the striking bin workers of Birmingham, despite the fact that it looks like the seventh circle of hell with rats the size of cats and is clearly a public health risk at this point, and are actually contemplating divorcing from the Labour Party, and they are one of the biggest financial backers. But equally, they are also an entity with a great amount of extreme leftist leverage over the Labour Party. I kind of think if they decide to part ways with the Labour Party and back Magic Grandpa and Zara Sultana and the Fruit and Nut Party, that might be a good thing for democracy.
Well, it might be. I mean, I do think, one of the small consolations about getting this Labour government for me was that at least they get a bit more of a grip on the unions. And in fact, the opposite seems to be happening. And they seem to be falling out with the unions worse than, they have a worse relationship with some of the unions, it seems to Unite now, than the Tories did. So it's another example of how this government is failing in so many ways. And I do find this sort of split on the left quite interesting. I think it might be becoming more real simply because this government is so empty and so unable to tackle problems that, yes, you're going to get people splitting to the left, splitting to the right, possibly too. This is an administration that is falling apart, and it's going to have several more years of falling apart. And I just dread to think how bad it's going to be in 2 years, let alone 3, 4.
Yeah, no, I tend to agree with you. And you know what? When the lights go out because Ed Zero has put more money into buying Wimbledon from China than he has making sure we can pay our energy bills, our studio might look a bit like your shed. There you are. That was Fred in a Shed, a.k.a. Freddie Gray, Deputy Editor, US Editor of The Spectator. A brilliant man indeed, sharing his political expertise with us. Aren't we lucky? Right, we're luckier still because after the break we're going to be having a big old head-to-head debate with Charlie Downs, spokesman for Restore Britain and a Daily Mail contributor, and Rory Boyle, podcast and commentator. That will be lively, so don't go anywhere. This lot pay my salary, so we've got to run their adverts. But after that, I'm back for an hour, 45 minutes more of common sense and madness.
well, we're talking about here 50 a week, something like that.
Yeah, 50 to 50 a week. Yeah.
It's 50 a week. OK. You said today there's about over 700.
We think 700 a day, 2,599 last week. Think about that.
So it's anything up to 1,000 a day, right, at the moment.
Yeah.
Now, how the hell have we got here? Because in 2018, it was around the number of migrants crossing the Channel was 299 for the year.
And welcome back, or welcome aboard if you've only just joined us. And like I keep saying, if that is you and you haven't been listening to since 6 a.m, I don't really judge you, because it's a bit weird to be up at 6 a.m. on a Saturday. But if you have been and you've kept tuned in for all of that time, well done. We're going to send you a gold star through the post. Well, an imaginary one, but you can attach it to your lapel, and all of those people with other invisible gold stars will tip you a nod every time they see you in the street, because they'll know you're a discerning patriot with brilliant taste. And if you didn't get to tune in from 6 a.m, well, guess what? You can actually go on YouTube or the Talk app and watch it back from the beginning and enjoy all of the fun that you have missed. But let's keep going, because the fun is going to continue, because it is time for this.
Head to head.
I always wonder whose voices they are when you hear those things. They're like a man in a cupboard somewhere that people just like email him things, and he's got like the X Factor man with that announcer voice, and he's just given things and he has to press a button, record it and distribute it around all the radio stations of the United Kingdom. Who knows? If anyone's got the answer, let us know. Anyway, on the right, we are joined by Charlie Downs, who's spokesman for Restore Britain, and now a Daily Mail contributor. Well done, young man. And Rory Boyle, a podcaster and a commentator. Now, what we like to do before we get going is you make eye contact, you shake hands, you make nice, you pretend you're best friends. Come on.
There we go.
We had quite a nice chat.
We had a nice chat. We've spoken before. We're all good.
But that ends here.
Of course.
Okay.
Produce some good television.
Right, yes.
Yeah.
First of all, Charlie, explain to us about Restore Britain, because people may have heard of it. They don't quite know what it is. So succinctly, let us know.
So, Restore Britain is a new movement that myself and Rupert Lowe MP, the independent MP for Great Yarmouth, formerly of Reform UK, have launched. And what we're seeking to do is act as a centre of gravity for all of the people who are concerned about the condition of this country, the trajectory that we're on, and who are thinking seriously about the future and what we need to do. So Rupert is uniquely positioned in Parliament as an independent MP. He doesn't answer to anybody apart from his constituents. And he has already proven his ability to shift the discourse on things like illegal migration, mass deportations, rape gangs, free speech, and all these other things. And what we're seeking to do with Restore Britain is to harness that position to continue to shift the discourse further. Now, people can join for the small fee of £20 a year, and they will have the ability to have their say over the issues that we're going to be campaigning on.
So it's like a policy entity, right?
It's something.
You're sort
It's
of
to be
taking
honest,
the temperature of the country and deciding.
Right. So what we're doing is actually quite unprecedented, I think, because we're some combination of a mass movement. You know, we have a membership already of in the tens of thousands. We are going to we're putting together as we speak the policy unit, which we're going to be using to produce well-researched, well-evidenced, tight, what Boris Johnson would call oven-ready policies. And we're also a pressure group, and we're seeking to apply pressure not just to the Conservatives, not just to Reform, but to the entire political landscape.
And not a political party, basically.
That's right. No,
that
we're
is
not
a very
political
important.
party. So anybody in Reform, anybody in the Conservatives, Labour, Lib Dems, Greens are welcome to join us if they care about the future of the country.
Well, there you go. I've just come up with a neologism for you, by the way, because you were saying that Rupert Lowe shifting public debate.
Yes.
The Loverton window.
Very good.
I know.
We'll have to steal
That's
that.
why they pay me the small fry amount that I get paid for coming up with a jazzy little term such as that. OK, let's get stuck in, shall we? We've been asking our audience today, who is to blame for the UK migrant crisis? Is it Emmanuel Macron? Because he ain't helping us, despite what money we're sending to France. He's like, oh, zut alors, it's not my problem. You are the one who put him in the hotel. Kind of agree with that. Is it Sir Keir Starmer, whose concept of doing a deal is saying, we'll only give you 4 years extra fishing? OK, go on, let's make it 12. Is it Tony Blair, who started it all in the first place, so people say? Is it Boris Johnson, who is the one who removed all of the thresholds when it comes to legal migration, thus seeing some of that peak at around 11 million people coming to Britain gross every single year? Let's start with you, Rory.
Well, I think, based on what you just said, I think it's a little bit of all of the above. I don't think that there's one concrete answer to this question. You can't pin it on one person, one political party, one organisation. As you know, Alex, this is a really complex issue. This is an issue that's essentially defining how people are voting in the era that we're in right now. I think, for me, I would rather that we do less of the finger pointing and have a stronger solution to this problem, because this France deal, I think, is just lip service and actually quite laughable, really. It's not going to work. And, if we break it down slightly, this deal is actually going to deal with a very small number of migrants. So it's roughly estimated that 1 in 20 migrants will be sent back under this deal. That means 95% of migrants are going to get to stay.
1 in 20 is a bit of an overestimate, really.
Well, it might be.
It
might be. Yes, but even if it were 1 in 20, let's say, in an ideal world, that's not ideal. It's not going to solve anything. So I think instead of all of this finger pointing, what we actually need is a really clear policy and an actual deterrent to people crossing the channel, because I don't think being sent back to France is as much of a clear deterrent. It's been proven many times that actually life in France is very good for many people. It's quite similar to the UK. They're a civilised country, they're a European country.
The French civilised? What sort of outrageous claims are you making this morning?
But, I hope you hear what I'm saying, and that this is flawed.
I love the French. I'm an absolute Francophile. Okay. I adore those little froggies. Yeah. I do, genuinely. I'm a fluent French speaker, and I go there often, and I do care for France. It's got good cheese, good wine, and they're a bit more right-wing than us, by and large, despite electing in people who aren't. Now, Charlie, Rory making a very good point there, that actually this deal is, I was going to swear then, but it's only 8:26 in the morning and Ofcom are listening,
Indeed.
So I won't. And I think we can all agree on that. Now, considering you're in the sort of factory of thought in Restore Britain, what should the policy be? How do we stop the small boats? It is the $64 million question. No one seems to have come up with a solution.
Well, I agree with Rory that there are a number of levels to this, a number of different factors at play. But I think the most fundamental, there's two most fundamental. The first is the legal side. So obviously there are laws in place which are no longer fit for purpose, and there is the legal doctrine of human rights, which came into being in the aftermath of the Second World War, when people were genuinely fleeing atrocities on the continent. It was perfectly suitable for that time. The idea that we would put refugees up in housing and clothe them and feed them made perfect sense. It was perfectly becoming of a civilised nation like our own to do that for people. But in this day and age, when there has been such unprecedented advancements in transport and communication technologies that's made it easier than ever for people to cross large distances in a relatively short and cheap, relatively short space of time and for a low cost, that legal framework is just not suited to the age that we live in. So obviously there's the European Convention on Human Rights and the Human Rights Act 1998, which enshrined those ideas in British law. And then there's the various laws that came into being that are sort of almost on top of the Human Rights Act, like the Immigration and Asylum Act 1999. And it's actually that law that forces us to put asylum seekers, so-called, up in accommodation at the taxpayer's expense. And so there's this, this quite complex network, this web of laws that have to be untangled in order for us to actually deal with this problem. But beneath that, Alex, is a moral question, I think, because it's, it doesn't come from nowhere, this kind of blind commitment to this doctrine of human rights, because there are still, even despite all the evidence that shows so many of these people coming across the channel are not authentic asylum seekers. Many, some of them are trafficked, and that's something I think that is a separate issue and should be talked about. But many of them are young men who are coming here seeking economic advantage and who don't want to be on the books because they are coming intending to work in the black market.
Well, some will be connected to gangs, some will be connected to terrorist organisations. I mean, one thing I don't think we speak about enough when it comes to this particular problem, I try and say it all the time to remind people or let people know, because very often people don't understand this. We often have politicians go, oh, people shouldn't be losing their lives at sea. Isn't that awful? Yeah, that is awful. They shouldn't. But also, what people need to understand is when people are giving a load of money to these organisations, it is lining the pockets of some of the most vile people on planet Earth, of Islamist organisations who would wish to use that money to then perpetrate great atrocities across the West. But not just that. Some of these international criminal cartels are in all sorts of dark business. Yes, it is predominantly men who come over on those boats. Do you know what happens to the teenagers and the women who join them at the early part? The women are plucked off to either go into domestic servitude if they're lucky, sold on the black market to become housekeepers in, a Gulf state. If they're very unlucky, they're trafficked as sex slaves.
Well, Alex,
teenagers. Organ harvesting.
I've got to tell you about this. So someone very close to me works in the NHS in maternity, and recently she met a young Vietnamese woman who couldn't speak a word of English, so they needed an interpreter. I think she was 22 or 23, and she had been raped. And she, they asked her, well, do you have any family in the UK? How did you get here? And she quite innocently said, oh, well, I came across on a boat. And it transpired that she had been trafficked by these people-smuggling gangs and was being kept in this facility, this warehouse, with a number of other young women.
How did she get out of it?
Well, God knows what kind of thing they're doing to these people. But it's I mean, as I say, she was pregnant, and she'd become pregnant as a result of sexual assault by one of the traffickers. And that's the kind of thing that goes on. Because I think a lot of people, certainly on our side of the ledger, Alex, make the mistake of being quite unsympathetic on this issue. And I think it's because of these images of young men coming across the channel that makes us that way, and quite rightly so in those cases, because these young men have no business being in this country. They are criminals and they pose threats to women and girls. But for those people who are being trafficked, those young women primarily who are being trafficked and who are being treated in the most, I can't even begin to imagine the living conditions they're in. They deserve sympathy.
This is the thing, isn't it, Rory? Yes, there might be genuine asylum seekers or people who just want a better life. You can't blame someone. Like I said, if someone said to me, do you want to go to Lanzarote, have a full-board hotel, earn a bit of pocket money on the side, pulling pints we won't tell the authorities, I'd be like, yeah, that'd be better than doing this. You can't blame people who want to take an opportunity when it's given to them. But people trafficking is probably the cruelest of all trades that exists in the world. We all get upset about slavery that happened 500 years ago. Why aren't people getting more upset about these people making billions, trillions of pounds? The illicit trade in human beings now absolutely outstrips, in terms of the global profits, the global drugs trade.
Well, I wish people would get more passionate about human trafficking, but I think, just to go back to a point you made a second ago as well, about people who, let's say, come over here, they're put up in a hotel, they get, let's say, £50 a week, and then other incentives to say, so access to certain services, etc. I want to humanise this for a second and say, I don't think those people have an amazing time of it. I still think that's a very difficult life, but I think we need time to answer your first question about how do we stop this. I think for that, it's very, very easy. It's documented, very easy for them and paid very easily. So, for example, in a country, if you don't have fit and healthy workforce who can do jobs like rubbish I think the wider issue, because in my view that's quite an extreme example, is people in the UK, employers in the UK, taking advantage of these migrants. Think about it, if they're already having room and board, then they're getting £50, and then they can do essentially as much work as they want under the radar. We need to clamp down on that. We need to clamp down on that.
You're right. I mean, we've heard about, there was a newspaper story done recently about the amount of people who work for, I think it was Deliveroo, who turn out to not be who they say they are. I've got to be careful because I don't want to libel a company and end up being dragged to court. But just the other day, I wasn't using Deliveroo, I was using Uber Eats, right? And I'm going to say this because this is true. I ordered something from Uber Eats, sitting at home. Apparently the person delivering my food was going to be called Gabriella. There was a picture of her, sweet looking little thing. I actually said to my boyfriend, I was like, oh, you don't often get a woman doing the deliveries. Anyway, the thing that knocked my door was definitely not Gabriella, unless Gabriella has been on a load of hormones and sort of grown about a metre taller and I've got a massive beard and a deep voice and looks pretty scary. And I kind of
It's amazing what we can do these days for science. I
know.
Well, listen, you know what? If a trans person wants to be Gabriella, I'm perfectly fine with that.
But I thought to myself, what am I supposed to do as a citizen here? Am I supposed to phone up Uber Eats and go, that ain't no Gabriella, stop, you know, employing these people? Was I supposed to challenge the person on? I mean, I didn't do any of those things. I just took my takeaway and went, oh, that weren't Gabriella, was it? But, you know, you kind of think as citizens, when I walk up and down my street, I look at some of the nail bars and I think to myself, yeah, that's probably a front, that's probably laundering. And those women sitting there having to, like, you know, scrub the bottoms of rich women's feet are probably not necessarily willing participants in all that. Same with the people who get their cars washed by those hand car wash people, you know, the vape shops, the Turkish barbers. We can all see it everywhere, and yet we still take the opportunity of using it, don't we?
But this is the key point, I think, and Macron, to his credit, has pointed this out. It's the pull factors that the UK has as a prospect for these illegal migrants who frequently cross the entirety of Europe just to come here. 1/3 of those entering Europe illegally have the UK as their final destination.
Why wouldn't we?
And what Macron has called for is to make it harder for illegal migrants to work in the UK, because right now, you know, on paper it's illegal for asylum seekers to work, but many of them do in crime and in this kind of these unregulated spaces like food delivery companies and the rest of it. Macron has also called for a reduction of the benefits to successful asylum applicants, because, you know, you effectively become a citizen when your asylum application is successful. You get a national insurance number, you're able to claim universal credit, you're able to claim job seekers allowance and all these other things. You're now allowed to work legally, you're allowed to access the NHS, but then you're also allowed to access the NHS before your asylum application is successful.
But on that point, though, I would just say that if we're talking about a British citizen or resident who's here legally, who's claiming benefits, who's fit and healthy and can work, because we know there are people milking the system who aren't migrants. We know that. Okay, that's a fact. I want to ask them, what are you doing to contribute to society? So I'm not saying that we shouldn't be thoroughly examining those who are here legally and who are taking jobs and have very sinister ulterior motives. But I also think the people of Britain need to look at themselves and say, am I too good to recycle rubbish, or should I be claiming benefits?
You're so right about this, because do you know what really gets on my way? I remember back in the day when people said, oh, the British people are too lazy, they don't want to do these jobs. I was like, how dare you say that? That was such a Remainer, disparaging thing to say. And I was like, now I'm like, OK, fair enough, you had a point. When I was young, 14 years old, I got my first job delivering newspapers. Then I worked at trolleys and behind the tills of Safeway. Literally, I've worked every day of my life since the age of 14. I had to get my driving lessons, to pay my way through university. I've done data input at the NHS. I've pulled pints. I've dressed up like a tart at a nightclub and made cocktails for the great and the good of Gloucester. You know, I've done a lot of it. And, you know, I remember when I was at school, my sixth form boyfriend did work on the dustbins. His father was the headmaster of my school and he worked as a binny.
It's good graft.
It's good graft. Just the other day, my other half ordered a ton of gravel he wants to put on his front garden. I really enjoyed it. I got the broom out. I was like sweeping like this, hard labour, sweating in the sunshine, all sorts of endorphins. It's very good for the soul. But what is wrong with the lazy younger generation?
It's the fact that there is even the option. Because if the only option was to work and to do these jobs, you would see people doing that. And I'll also say, actually, that illegal and legal migration makes it so difficult for workers to actually bargain with their bosses, because when there is this pool of labour who are prepared to take lower wages and who are prepared to accept worse working conditions because they're from regions of the world, for example, like North Africa and the Middle East, you know, it makes it very difficult for indigenous British workers to make their case.
Yeah, but also, you know, when I was sort of 16, 17, 18, if I wasn't working at the supermarket or then later in the pubs, what would I be doing with spare time? Like playing with rocks in the back garden. Nowadays, there's smartphones and Netflix and, you know, you can sort of quite happily pass the time, can't you?
But let me ask you this, though. With those jobs that you named that you had, I would imagine you had employment checks for those jobs. I would imagine that those employment checks, especially, let's say, working in a pub or working somewhere public, I would say they were relatively thorough. You know, there's a huge argument now for bringing in ID cards. People are saying that might solve this, that might solve the problem of people being exploited.
Right.
I don't know if that's going to work.
I used to be against ID cards. Now I'm a bit like, oh gosh, I'm having to become a leftist. What a dreadful turn of events.
Hey, it ain't so bad over here.
Back in the day, they didn't need to check if I was a migrant in Gloucester because there were no such things. You know, it's just like, oh look, you probably aren't. Alexandra Phillips doesn't really sound very exotic either, does it? Right, we're going to take a short break now, but don't go anywhere because more of this after that.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Right, we're all discussing, by the way, welcome back to the show, we're discussing what we did when we were youngsters, earning money to pay our way in life, which is what a lot of youngsters need to learn how to do. 18 to 25-year-olds, about a quarter of them can't be bothered getting out of bed. They've all got mental health. I mean, get over yourselves. But I was saying that, you know, when I used to come home from university, I worked by daytime doing data input for the NHS, like filling out these sort of like things on computers, creditor payments it was. So you get all these invoices, put in the invoice number, press. I mean, it's amazing to see what the NHS was spending money on. That was eye-opening. Yeah. And I'd go home, go to bed for a few hours, wake up, go to a nightclub in Gloucester, serve the cocktails. It wasn't cocktail, it was cocktails, but sort of like aftershocks. Nightmare. They were so sticky on the bar top. And then finish at about 3 in the morning, go home, go back to bed, wake up in the morning, go to the NHS, come home, go to bed, work in the nightclub. I had a job in the daytime, a job in the nighttime, and I managed to pay my way through, well, not entirely through university, but, and I actually loved it.
I think that is the thing, though. I mean, Alex, this was a different time because, you know, to go to bat for my my peers in that 18 to 25-year-old bracket, you know, why would you bother grafting like that when there's literally no prospect of being able to afford a house, you know, even to rent a house, right?
Well, there's no, well, I'm 41 and I still don't own a house, so, you know, don't get excited about that anytime soon.
But you know what I mean, like, you know, when one can, for example, go on disability benefits for mental health issues, or they can do what you've just described.
It is not the problem, actually, that work is by and large quite good, that you actually do enjoy it. I mean, you were just saying to me during the break how much you enjoyed bar work.
Yeah,
I loved bar work.
Yeah, great fun.
It's amazing.
Yeah. Well, no, I think that's probably, I mean, you know, work is good for you. And I think that's something that's not said enough. I mean, the government certainly doesn't seem to even believe that. They seem to think that it's better for you to be on the dole at the state's expense. But, you know, work is at worst, it's a necessary evil. Like, not working should not be an option unless you are absolutely, physically unable to work.
No, I agree.
But that's not the world we live in,
I think there are so many benefits to being a part of the workforce. You just mentioned mental health. I think, kind of in jest, I think mental health is a real issue. But I think if someone does have bad mental health, actually getting up and working can really help to solve that.
Yeah.
You feel like you're contributing to society. Obviously, you earn money. You can upskill yourself. I think you learn from your other colleagues. You integrate as well better into this country if you are actively working with people. I think we've all just said that we've worked with the public. That's character building. We all know that's character building.
One thing I will say on that, because I like the argument that work makes you feel fulfilled and that sort of thing. But at the same time, the kind of economy that we have, where it is, very well. Like, is working in McDonald's, if you're depressed, is working in McDonald's going to make you feel better? I actually don't think it will.
The problem we got is, like, the lowest paid in society now are getting $2.5 grand less a year than people on full benefits, and that is absolutely wrong. But there you go. Working is good. It's like you said, it's sort of purpose, it's routine, it's socialisation, it's all the things you need to feel like a happy human. Now, let's talk about Reform UK. They have had 2 defections in recent times, one in the form of David Jones, who was at one point a Secretary of State for Wales. Before that, he was an MP. Before that, he was an Assembly member, I understand. He is not going to return to frontline politics, I don't think. Similarly, we have Sir Jake Berry, who's a former chair of the Conservative Party, who has also said he now backs reform. Again, I don't think he wants to return to frontline politics, but is keen to help them get into number 10. Is there a risk, though? I'm going to start with you, for understandable reasons, Charlie. Is there a risk that this is essentially now the Reform Party is becoming a repository for Conservatives, has been Conservatives, and perhaps in the future Conservatives jumping ship because they realise their political career will burn out if they stay with that withering entity?
Well, I think a lot of people in Reform space, including myself, I am, despite my involvement with Rupert Lowe, who I don't think is any secret, is not exactly the best friend of Nigel Farage. They don't exactly get along these days. I remain a member of Reform UK, and I still do believe that they are, at the moment, the most viable vehicle for the kind of radical change I would like to see in this country. But with that being said, I think people are rightly concerned that they are taking in the very worst elements of the Conservative Party. I mean, Sir Jake Berry is not some nobody. He was at the very core of the 14 years of betrayal that the Conservative Party inflicted on this country from 2010 to 2024. Is it not
possible to have a sort of Damascene revelation? Robert Jenrick did it, and suddenly when I've actually seen the error of my previous political lives, Rupert Lowe, of course, was for a long time involved in the Conservative Party and backed Boris Johnson.
And even Michael Gove now. We're seeing, even from Michael Gove, contrition on these issues and an admission of the fact that what they did to this country was hugely damaging. But back to Jake Berry, I mean, is it any coincidence that Rossendale and Darwen, which is his former seat that he lost to Labour in 2024, which he held from 2010 to 2024, the 14 years of betrayal, is it any coincidence that he's joined Reform at a time when they are polling at 40.1% in that seat, whilst the Conservatives
but Jake
are
has said
polling
he don't
at
want to go into frontline politics at all. I've spoken to Jake personally.
Sure. Yes, well, maybe so.
He's done with it. He says it's a miserable job anyway.
Maybe that's possible. And hey, maybe, I mean, look, I don't think that Reform should be rejecting people just because they are, formally associated with the Tory party. Because I don't think there is an idea that goes around in Reform circles that all candidates should be just local people and they should be a new batch of talent coming through. And I think to an extent that's absolutely necessary. But also you do need people who have experience in frontline politics and who know how to govern fundamentally. Because if we have in 2029 a parliament full of people who have no idea what they're doing, it's going to be a disaster. And I think a lot of people are actually concerned about
Hold that thought, because I just want to read this message before we go to Rory. Someone said, hi Alex, remind that plum, Charlie Downs. I don't know why you're a plum.
Oh, plum.
Maybe it's my tie.
Is this plum fruit or plum because you're plummy? Are you plummy?
I don't know.
Did you go to school with one of those names and a funny hat?
Not really. No. No, I didn't at all.
Like normal state school
kid. School, yeah.
Proper lad, there you go. Yeah. Remind that plum, Charlie Downs, that Rupert ain't a Nigel Farage. The folk are behind Nigel and Reform. We don't need new parties splitting the votes. Well, there you go. Put that in your pipe and smoke it, because it ain't a party.
Yeah,
you're
Restore Britain's not a party.
Still a member of Reform. And I actually have to say, all credit to Rupert Lowe, because when Ben Habib said, do you want to join my outfit, he just went, No. So fair enough.
Yeah, I mean, now it's just not the time for more parties. We've got enough parties. The question is one of direction.
Go take up golf, lad. Do you know that's what most men should do in retirement, not set up political parties?
I know, listen, I like Ben a lot and I wish him the best, and I think, you know, what he's trying to do is admirable, but I think the system is geared in such a way to just not allow that kind of insurgency that he's seeking to do, which is why we didn't go for a new party, we went for a movement.
I think it is a question of direction. I think, to answer your initial question, Alex, the reason why people are maybe sceptical or have questions about this is because, you know, the Tory party has been a mess for a long time now. And I think you've just said Barry saying doesn't want to go back into politics. That's fair enough. But I think there are probably many Tory MPs and many people with ties to the Tory party who know that it's going to take a lot of hard work for the Tories to get back into power anytime soon. And perhaps because of that, Reform, I would argue, are the party with the most similar leanings to the Conservatives. And therefore, it's easy for them to sidestep into Reform because Reform are now doing well, it would seem, numbers going up, it would seem, and for them to sidestep and further their political careers is an easy option. So I do have some cynicism surrounding this. Look, it's not the first time we've seen this in politics. People flip-flop all the time. And, you know, voters flip-flop all the time too. But I do understand the wariness behind it.
I'm totally with you. You know, where was your spine? To all these Tories who might be thinking in the back of their head, oh, I might defect to Reform one day if it suits me, if it serves my political career. Where were you when people in UKIP 1.0 were being called racists and monsters? Where were you when we were tirelessly working for Brexit and being accused of being xenophobes and racists? Where were you all this time when the people of UKIP, then the Brexit Party, then Reform UK were happy to give up their lives, give up their time, give up their social circles even, be damned in their workplaces, be ostracised in their friendship group because they wanted to sacrifice to deliver for the country? Where were you? Oh, that's right, you took the easy option. So don't you dare change your mind now that you want your political career to continue and think that you can just walk on in there like you belong, because you don't. That's my view. Anyway,
all right.
There we are. Let's take a little break now, shall we, before I get too exercised. But don't go anywhere because more of this after this.
Some breaking news this morning revealed that under the Terrorist Act, 242 people were arrested in the year to June of this year.
That's something you can indulge in as to all the people who aren't going to prison because, well, there's no prison spaces.
So this is a Talk exclusive we've been looking at.
I said, you take these cuffs off me and speak to me like a human being rather than a common criminal.
You're just left wondering, does these people who lead us actually hate Britain? Yeah. Do they not love our country and everything that we've stood for?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is talk.
Hello there and welcome back. We're going to continue our little head-to-head. And a very interesting article today in the Mail. Interestingly, very similar to something I was writing for my Substack just last night. Bailiffs tearing down a migrant shantytown in Park Lane, a fatal stabbing in Nightsbridge, the rich fleeing their swanky homes. Another week in our tired, tarnished and alarmingly dangerous capital. That's interesting because I took it upon myself to write about that very subject last night, and I was making the case that London contributes 25% to the national GDP. Very disproportionate, but it's because we're a small nation and it's our big capital city. 20.3 million visitors every year compared to the next city in the queue, which is Edinburgh, 2.3 million. If you're going to visit Britain, everybody passes through London. If you're going to do business, it is in London. And yet now you've got a situation where the kids with the zombie knives aren't just stabbing each other, they're stabbing other people, including visitors. Sir Jim Ratcliffe, the third richest man in the UK, just won't wear a watch anymore. Mo Farah's moved his kids out to Qatar for their safety. What is going on in the capital, Rory?
Well, I think that a lot of the knife crime issues sadly come back to drugs. I think that is a huge factor. We were talking about the migrant situation earlier. You know, there's obviously, with human trafficking, a lot of illegal drug trade as well. And I think that really what we need to do is look at the end result that we want. The end result of knife crime is prison or death. But we need to look at the factors to, you know, stop people from getting into knife crime, young people specifically. We know for a fact the people who are most affected by knife crime are young black boys. And I don't really think there's been a policy or any sort of proper infrastructure to stop that in the last decade.
I mean, arguably, everything that was a preventative measure, I mean, look, there's always these kids lobbying me outside Waitrose on Kensington High Street going, help us give DJ lessons to kids instead of stabbing each other.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, that's all good and well, but that stuff don't work.
Yeah.
We got rid of stop and search, you know, and that to me is mad, because you're saying largely as young black guys, and they're also largely the victims. Why would it not be in that community's interest to make sure anyone carrying a weapon, or, you know, yes, it might feel a bit offensive if you're walking down the street and someone says, right, that's it, I'm singling you out, you know, profiled you, that you could be a threat. Just blimmin' let the police search you and get on with your day.
Well, let me ask you this. Why do we not actively do stop and search for middle-class white people who are carrying cocaine around London all the time? We don't do that, okay?
Oh gosh, so half of Parliament would be out of work, wouldn't they?
Yeah.
Gone, done.
Half the people who work in media would be out of work, let's be honest. So I think that there's something in that. I think also the police need to have a harder stance on this. For example, there's a great activist called Omar Sharif. He's written a book on knife crime. He was involved in knife crime.
Omar Sharif was an actor who played like Lawrence of Arabia or something.
And maybe there's another one out there. Who knows?
Who lost a property in Lanzarote in a gambling competition.
Love that movie though, so camp. But anyway, he wrote a book on knife crime and how he got out of it. And he essentially said there were 2 to 3 times he was stopped in the street when he was carrying a knife by the police, and they gave him a warning and let him go because that's how out of control it is. So really what we need is some kind of proper policy. I mean, I know there was someone whose name escapes me now, but was sentenced to 20 years for carrying acid. There's a 5-year sentence, in my opinion, that should be introduced if you're carrying a knife in the street. I do think that's a proper deterrent to stop people.
So we should bring back the idea of Borstals, right? Youth detention centres. But there is something else going on, isn't there? Yes, there's the young kids connected to drugs and the gangs and the turf wars and the county lines. But when you got people being stabbed up for their watches, when you got all the phone thefts taking place, and it's an extortionate amount now, this is largely connected to hardened gangs run by foreign criminals. You got the Albanian cartels, you got the Chinese cartels, they're behind a lot of the phone thefts. These phones are basically put in shipping containers, sent back to China to be remade and sold in China or shipped back to Britain. Even the shoplifting very often is theft to order. Some of this stuff is being put in vans, taken over to the Balkans for their new luxury restaurants. So all these people with their ill-gotten gains can go and enjoy the steak that's just been nicked from your local Marks and Spencer. I mean, I don't understand how Albanian gangs have consolidated the criminal underworld in the UK, and that is a fact. You can look on Organised Crime Index. why are we still letting Albanians in?
Well, that
should we just be like, well, you present a bit of a risk, sorry?
Yeah, that's the great question. I mean, something that we're lobbying for at Restore Britain is a red list of countries who obviously and demonstrably pose nationals from those countries pose a greater threat to the general public than those from other countries. I mean, for example, Afghanistan massively over-indexes in sexual assaults. You know, Afghan nationals who come to the United Kingdom massively over-index, orders of magnitude higher than other ethnicities that come to the UK in sexual assault. And the same is true of various other nationalities like Albanian when it comes to crime. And so there is a demographic element to all of this, and that cannot be denied. And that's what's uncomfortable.
Would you back that, Rory? Because I kind of think, yes, it's a shame for the brilliant people from Albania who aren't connected to crime, which is probably the majority of the population of Albania. But at the same time, Trump's kind of done this with countries. Get your act together, sort yourself out. We're not going to take any more people from your country. Tough luck to even the good guys, because otherwise, this is too much of a risk for us. Would you agree with that, or do you think it's wrong to target a country?
Well, I loathe Trump with my whole heart, so I'm going to skip over that for 1 second and just go back to one thing that you said about youth detention centres and building more of them. I don't think that's the answer. I don't think jamming people in prisons and detention centres is the answer to this problem. Yes, we should have harsh sentences for those who are found carrying knives. That is one way of eradicating this problem. But I also think we do need money put back into services. You mentioned DJ lessons earlier. Okay, I don't know that DJ lessons are going to solve knife crimes, but the Tories got rid of a ton of youth centres. I know when I was young, that was somewhere for me to go and engage with other young people. I know when I was starting out in my media career, there were lots of services across London that got you into work, got you to meet other young creatives. And I really do think having a young person in a creative programme or fulfilling their full potential, essentially, can take them away from another kind of life. I think, since the death of Stephen Lawrence, the murder of Stephen Lawrence in '97, there have been so many other racially motivated, racist murders.
Is that because why have we not heard about them then?
Well,
because this is what I don't understand. If there had, Stephen Lawrence is a name that everybody in the country knows, but I hadn't heard of another Stephen Lawrence, and I kind of feel it'd be headlines everywhere if it had happened.
I can tell you why. Because the media are racist and they platform white people who have been murdered over people of colour. For example, Marlon Moran, killed in 2007 by a gang following racist abuse of his family. There was Kester David, killed in 2010, bus driver found under a bridge. It was ruled a suicide. It was not a suicide. The police were later found to be complicit. There have been 5 racist killings a year since Stephen Lawrence. That's proved by the Institute of Race Relations.
I've got to say, we've got time. We haven't got time, guys, because we've got to go to the advert break, and the top of the hour advert break is sort of like, the hard one.
Stop, yeah.
But guys, thank you ever so much. I'm going to look into those stats. Thank you for that. Thank you to both of you. Fantastic having you here. Don't go anywhere. There's still one more hour of the show to go. I am back just after this.
Just been talking in the office here about how many of us have been attacked at some point or other by some form of flying beast or any wildlife. I mean, so we'll take your stories this morning.
Hello, this story is concerning wildlife. It's concerning a rhino.
A rhino?
Right? Yeah,
okay.
rhino. I used to live in Kenya when I was about 5 or 6 years old.
Okay.
And we were in this wildlife park in a grey Morris Minor. This rhino started chasing us. There's me and my sister in the back seat.
Right.
It was like something out of Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
We were turning around saying, "Believe it, Dad. Just put your foot down, Dad. We're in a field. Put your foot down." This rhino was chasing us.
One from Mark here in Derby. Went on holiday for our first romantic holiday to Tunisia years ago. Decided to take my girl into a petting zoo. I got a bag of food to feed the animals. A giant goat then went for me, putting its front legs over my shoulders and proceeding to headbutt me over a fence. into one of the pens, covering me in the food and making my nose bleed. I got out of the pen, then the goat and all his mates attacked me again, sending me running and screaming like a girl out of the zoo, with my girlfriend rolling with laughter on the floor.
A tarantula climbed up the bottom of the bed on the sheet, and it walked all the way up. It's eyeball to eyeball.
Wow.
And I thought to myself, what am I going to do when it climbs over my face? But then a miracle happened. It raised its two front legs and waved them around. And then it turned around and walked down the side of the sheet.
Boris Johnson been attacked by an ostrich. The former PM was enjoying a safari trip with his family when the bird leaned into his car and went oi oi, and
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there and welcome back. I can't believe 3 hours has passed already, which means we're in the final hour of the show. It flies by when you're having fun. If you've only just tuned in because you've had better things to do this morning, like getting your beauty sleep, and I frankly don't blame you on a Saturday, then don't worry, because you don't have to miss out. You can go onto the Talk app or onto YouTube, scroll all the way back to the beginning and enjoy the entire show at whatever time you like, whatever you're doing. If you're hoovering, if you're making the dinner, if you're digging up the marrows in your allotment, if you're walking your dog, if you're on that long car journey to go and visit Mrs. Miggins, then I am going to be here for you at your convenience whenever you wish. So do take the time to go back, because we had a bumper first couple of hours. I was joined in the studio by my Bezza, Belinda DeLucy, and believe you me, that was fun. That woman ain't my best friend for no reason. She is top. And that was a brilliant start to the show. And we've kept the quality going throughout the day, and we're not going to disappoint you now, because we've got in the studio Kate Ferguson, political editor of The Sun on Sunday, and she is here to guide us through all the big political stories. Right, let's go. Let's first of all talk about what is going on with Unite the Union. At one point, the biggest backers of the Labour Party, funneling loads of money and using that for their leftist political leverage. Now they're chucking out Angela Rayner for telling the binnies of Birmingham to get back to work and saying that they're going to reconsider their relationship with the Labour Party. This is actually quite big, isn't it?
Yeah, it's actually kind of an astonishing Labour civil war, really. As you point out, Unite's a huge Labour backer. They were usually, historically, their biggest funder, a huge backer of Angela personally, the deputy PM. They've given loads of money to her personal campaigns to be re-elected. But these besties have broken up, it looks like. They say they've chucked Angela Rayner out of the union. Angela says, I dumped you first, I'd already left. That's a bit of a row. But the bigger picture is that Unite are threatening to disaffiliate from the Labour Party, which will be a huge breach between Labour and their historic backers of the union.
And we're talking about a lot of money as well. Wasn't there a rule change? I might be getting this wrong here, but at one point there was this sort of, if you paid into a union, the money automatically went to the Labour Party. Then that changed, and I think it was reinstated. Is there a risk to the Labour Party, perhaps, that Unite are dumping the Labour Party for not being left-wing enough? How? And are now eyeing up what Zara Sultana and Jeremy Corbyn are putting together, thinking, actually, we'd be better off funneling our funds into that entity.
Yeah, exactly. So Unite have, under Sharon Graham, their new Gen Sec, have been kind of turning off the money taps to Labour bit by bit. They've been limiting how much money they donate to them. But you're right, big picture is that you've got the emergence of this new political party. It's not been formally launched yet, but we know that's going to happen any week now. Jeremy Corbyn, Zara Sultana, and probably some of those independent candidates. Could Unite throw their weight behind them? Or, as I suspect Sharon wants them to do, could they hoard their money to themselves and sort of funnel all that cash into kind of militant trade unionism, so into things like keeping this strike in Birmingham going, which is what Sharon usually wants them to do.
Oh, blimmin' heck, it's the last thing we chuffing well need. Oh, gosh. Anyway, so Keir Starmer says he believes in the sentiments behind his Island of Strangers warning, despite the fact he disavowed it. That was a weird thing to do. I didn't know what was in the speech before I read the author to my speech. You're the Prime Minister. You don't know what words are going to be coming out your mouth, idiot. But he's now basically saying to The Sun, he didn't disavow the meaning of what he was saying. Actually, it is important that we do integrate. All right, Tell us how then, Starmer.
It's very confusing. What does Starmer think on immigration? No one knows. So at first he gives this kind of punchy speech where he uses that phrase, we could become an island of strangers unless we integrate. Then his Labour MPs kick off at him because that's a kind of echo of a famous Enoch Powell speech. Then, as you point out, Keir says, oh, I had no idea. I didn't even read the speech before I said it. I regret that. And now in an interview in The Sun, he said, well, I don't regret the whole speech, just that particular phrase, but I agree with the sentiment of the speech. And, Keir Starmer is always criticised for these endless U-turns and for people not knowing exactly what he thinks. And here you've just got another example of that kind of cloudy, confused thinking.
Yeah, I mean, there's an argument saying because he is wishy-washy, because he's not really a politician, I get the impression that the Labour Party just wanted him there because he looked semi-sensible. Once upon a time, he was sort of like hardline Corbyn backing person. Then he's like, I've thrown all of that lot out of the party. And then he's sort of pivoting between the far left and then going very right-wing at times. And you just think, you've got to pick a lane, son. You know, you are the Prime Minister. You can't just be, you know, dished around like flotsam and jetsam, but it's leading to these massive divisions. And here we are, the scariest story that I've read in a newspaper for a very long time. This is Leo McKinstry here, page 10 of The Sun, saying that Big Ange could well be in line to take over and become our Prime Minister. I mean, heaven forfend.
So Keir Starmer's obviously plummeting in popularity, both with the public, but with his own MPs after those screeching welfare U-turns and big rebellions. So already, just a year after that big majority victory, everyone's talking about who his successor could be. And most people think eventually it will be a contest between Angela Rayner or Wes Streeting. And here, Leah's done a big piece about, is Angela going to be kind of the next Red Queen? She's the one that came out of those welfare talks with her star rising really high. She kind of proved that she was really important and influential in the party, and also kind of buttered up a lot of the backbench MPs in that process, and that is very important for her future leadership prospects. But yeah, I mean, could we be in a position where Angela Rayner is the first female leader of the Labour Party and first PM potentially?
And what are the mechanisms for that to happen? Because we all know what the mechanisms are in the Conservative Party. You write a letter, you wheel Sir Graham Brady out the stationery cupboard, he counts the envelopes, and then they, you know, change the leader, basically, and put it to a vote of the membership. I don't really understand the process in the Labour Party because it's far more convoluted, so I don't really know how viable this is, that this could happen.
It's not as easy by any means as in the Tory Party, where you have those, those endless letters of no confidence we went through with the last few Tory leaders, where they were always sort of perilously close to the edge. The reality is that Keir Starmer, it's very hard to oust him. Really, what would be more likely, I think, if Keir Starmer doesn't stand for re-election at the next... If Keir Starmer doesn't stay on as PM, it will probably be because he's decided to stand down.
Right, because I
rather
hear
than being
murmurs,
forced
he don't like
out.
it much, does he, this job? I've heard he doesn't really enjoy it.
Well, it's strange that we're already in a position where people are openly talking and speculating about how long he will be Prime Minister, and who could succeed him just 1 year after that big general election victory.
I mean, I look on horror at this because, I mean, in many respects, I think Angela Rayner's quite fun. I'd happily go to the pub with her and down a bottle of Echo Falls and take part in the pub quiz. We'd probably lose because I don't think she's the brightest brain of Britain, and I don't mean that in a nasty, misogynistic way. I just don't think she is. But at least, actually, if we did get Angela Rayner as the Prime Minister, we would have something that kind of reflects what we've got anyway, It seems to me we've got the wolf in sheep's clothing with Sir Keir Starmer, especially with that Lord Hermer creeping around in the background with his international law and his sort of radical Marxism, telling everybody that he basically runs the country. He, to me, is the master puppeteer of the lot of them. At least with Angela Rayner, you kind of get what we're getting. It's very clear that she's a socialist. She's an old-school socialist. She's a firebrand, and, that's what she is, whereas this government is sort of, well, those things are not.
Yeah, I mean, what Angela's supporters would say is she's an authentic politician, right? With Angela, you sort of know what her politics are. She doesn't try and hoodwink you, and what you see is what you get with her. And we are in an era of authentic politicians. You think of Trump, you think of Farage. So you're right, maybe that'll work out for her. Certainly it's true that there are many people in the Labour Party who would be very worried about Angela becoming leader, that could kind of torpedo their chances of re-election even further. So she's not universally popular, But yeah, she certainly is an authentic politician.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, like I said, I'd rather know what we're getting rather than have someone who pretends to be something they're not. What do you make of the defections to Reform UK, before I let you go? I mean, interesting scalp in the form of Sir Jake Berry, who, you know, the Conservatives, first of all, said, oh, that's a good gain by Reform. He's a very beloved chairman. He's a great organiser. He's a sensible man. We all liked him. He's got a lot of talent. Give it 24 hours and like, yeah, he was a Remainer and he loves net zero. Ha, ha, ha. I mean, you know, it's what happens. That's called spin doctoring. But is he a significant scalp for the party?
I think most people behind the scenes would say he is a pretty significant scalp for the party. You know, former Tory chairman, steeped in the party's history, so not kind of a flaky one-term MP that is going to go this way or that. I think the question for Reform is how many Tories do they want to recruit? So there is a thing about needing to beef up their ranks. They could possibly win in Wales next year. They're obviously hoping to make gains in Scotland, and they need people with real kind of administrative and political experience. But, you know, there are people in Reform already warning that they shouldn't become Tory 2.0, and a lot of Reform's popularity is based on the unpopularity of the Tory party that was just in government. So there's a fine line to tread for Farage, I think, and who he does accept, who's worth it and who's not worth it.
Yeah, no, and I agree with you. They're going to need experience in their ranks. One thing I thought was quite hilarious when the Conservative Party said they need to come out right now and say they're not going to take Liz Truss. It's like she's the bogeyman, isn't she? Every time someone asks Sir Keir Starmer a challenging question in PMQs, he just goes, Liz Truss. Even the Conservative Party have resorted to it now, and they don't want to answer a question or want to distract from, you know, a burning dumpster fire. People just say the words Liz Truss, invoke the spectre of Prime Ministers past. Poor woman.
Yeah, I think that is true. I mean, it's hard to think of anyone with a political reputation as low as in the gutter of the public as Liz Truss. She's sort of fighting back on her Twitter. You know, who knows, one day maybe she'll re-emerge as having a bit of a band or following, but currently it's universally sort of popular.
I quite like Liz, considering that Rachel Reeves is getting away with murder with the economy. I think Liz was very hard done by and large.
Well, she wasn't like in there very long, really, was she? Maybe the person to go for a drink with Echo Falls would be you, Liz Truss, and Angela Rayner. I think that might be quite a fun trio.
I know, actually, would you come with us? Yeah, you'd love it. You'd be sitting there like, doing your shorthand, taking notes.
Talking of like authentic, interesting people in politics, that's probably quite interesting.
Now, before I let you go, any sneak preview of what we might be seeing in The Sun on Sunday? As you are the political editor, are you sitting on some whoppers?
Well, I think like in the paper tomorrow, we're going to be looking again at the big migrant crisis, that borders crisis that's been plaguing our country. I think you're going to see that time and again. Obviously, we've got a heat wave this weekend, so I suspect we're going to see loads more boats crossing over into Dover. So that's a huge topic for us. We'll be getting into more of that Rayner row, that big Rayner Unite Labour row, and what that means for the party too.
There you go, and buy the world's best newspaper tomorrow. In fact, buy it today, but especially buy it tomorrow, because our very own Kate Ferguson has edited the political section, and a great journalist she is too. Thank you so much for joining us in the studio. Right, we're going to be taking a short break now, but don't go anywhere, because we want to dig deeper into this disgusting stabbing in Nightsbridge. Outside a Nightsbridge hotel, Blue Stevens, 24 years old, fatal stab wounds as he tried to fight off an assailant attempting to nick his Rolex. I'm afraid to say, when you live in London, there's nothing about this story that is surprising, and yet it should be deeply shocking. We're going to be talking to retired Scotland Yard detective Mike Neville live in the studio about this just after this break.
Some breaking news this morning revealed that under the Terrorist Act, 242 people were arrested in the year to June of this year.
That's something you can indulge in as to all the people who aren't going to prison because, well, there's no prison spaces.
So this is a talk exclusive we've been looking at.
I said, you take these cuffs off me and speak to me like a human being rather than a common criminal.
You're just left wondering, does these people who lead us actually hate Britain?
Yeah.
Do they not love our country and everything that we've stood for?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there and welcome back. Now, I have been a resident of London for well over a decade now, and when I first moved to the capital, yes, it's a capital city. Yes, you'd have people nicking handbags, trying their luck at pickpocketing. But I used to go for a drink at the local pub. Wasn't that local, actually, about a 10-15 minute walk away, and I'd walk home at night. I can remember sort of, speaking on my phone to people as I walked through London or using Google Maps to figure out where I'm going, especially when you're new to London, you haven't got a blimmin' clue. And I never thought twice about those things. Whereas now, you really, as soon as you have to get your phone out of your bag or your phone's out as you tap out of a tube station and you think, oh, I don't know where to go, I need to look at Google Maps. You know that you can't do that because the likelihood is you will get attacked. I mean, it is now the likelihood. Equally, I used to work near Berkeley Square until very, very long hours and walk back past all the private members clubs and the Michelin star restaurants and the Ferrari garage. And again, I was on my phone, doing work or listening to music, didn't think twice about it. Whereas now, loads of people who have to pass through Mayfair will tell you it is absolutely lawless because of all the wealth that slushes around there, the oligarchs, the rich Saudis, the businessmen, the people who work in finance. There are people everywhere waiting to attack you. And they're now stopping at nothing to get what they want. And I think this is really highlighted by the story of a young father stabbed to death in front of his partner outside a five-star hotel in West London in Mayfair. A masked thief had been trying to steal his gold watch. And Blue Stevens, who's 24, decided he was going to fight back, and who can blame him? And yet, the assailant took a big knife and stuck it straight into his abdomen, killing him, all for the sake of trying to steal a watch. Now, once upon a time, we knew there was knife crime in London and we assumed it was just gang members fighting other gang members. But it's not anymore. It could be anyone. Right, Mike Neville is here, former Met Police detective. Now, have you seen a huge change in the way that crime has escalated in London and how dangerous it is to be in our capital?
Well, even personally, Alex, I had my phone out at Charing Cross station. A guy rode by, tried to grab it, missed it, grabbed the guys next to me. So I've actually personally witnessed these things, but the levels of violence in the 9 years that Khan's been the mayor, there's been a 30% increase in violent crime. The area that you're speaking about there, that Mayfair, that rich area, in a year the robberies have gone up by 33%. So there's all these increases, but what I see in London is a general lawlessness. Mm-hmm. So from top to bottom. So you saw all the things with Robert Jenrick and people you've experienced, I've experienced, people barging by you on the tube.
Yeah.
You go into a shop, there's certain items you have to ask for because the thieves don't even put it in the jacket anymore, do they? They put it in a bag and walk out.
Walk out brazenly.
And you just got the impression that from top to bottom, whether it's low-level thieving or violent crime, it's happening, it's increasing. And people are getting advice now when they come to this country, it's like going to some third world country, don't wear this jewellery, don't wear this kind of watch. And that's really, well, one, it's really bad for tourism here, but what does it say for the residents that you're not safe on the streets?
Well, exactly. I mean, London is still the capital of our country and the capital of all business. It's 25% of our GDP. Most people who come over here to work in our biggest contributor to the country's profits, which is the financial financial services industry. People from all around the world come to London to work in that because we are a world leader. Well, they won't want to anymore if this continues. And as per usual, you were just saying to me during the advert break, and I think it is worth pointing out. So I read this story. It saddened me deeply. This is a father who is now dead because some scrote with a mask thinks it's acceptable to kill someone in an effort to get their watch. But quelle surprise, he's on the run, no one's caught him. Well, it'd help to have a blimmin' description, wouldn't it?
It would
Guess
help.
what?
It would help to have a description. The latest craze in the police, and like what we saw in the Liverpool, where there's that terrible incident with the crowd, with the man driving in the crowd. It was automatically announced, it's a white man who's done it. No, we've now been into this for 2 days. There is a top team of detectives on that case, a murder squad, so a whole team, 20-odd murder squad detectives with a senior officer. Somebody must have seen this guy. The partner was there at the time when it happened, and also that area is, like most of London, is covered with CCTV. So there must be some image or something of this attacker, and yet we're getting nothing. Is he wearing some distinctive clothing? We can't help the police if we don't get descriptions, but all it adds to all the time, the moment you read something and there's no description, people make an assumption, and too often it's the right assumption.
Right. No, exactly, you're absolutely right. It boils my blood to see this happen. But what is behind all of this violence? I mean, I assume it's a combination of factors. My feeling is it's the fact that nothing's been done about all these kids in their COVID masks with their hoods up. You know, they should be dragged out of the tubes and dragged off their bicycles and told, you show your face or else. I think there's that element. I think there's the whole, the police are worried about sort of, you know, going after a young black kid on an e-scooter who's doing nothing wrong, who cries racism, because then they're suspended for yonks of time, losing out on overtime, really being hit financially, sometimes up to a year, if not more, where they can't serve as police officers while these blimmin' racism cases get adjudicated. But also, I think we've allowed into this country, and this is what I want to ask you about, some really hardened foreign criminal elements.
Well, let me give you an example, Alex. In 1951 in London, there was only 300 robberies reported in a year. There's now 150 times that amount of robberies in a year in London. So what has changed since 1951? We have literally brought into this country some people who shouldn't be here. We've got enough of our own bad people without importing more, and we bring people, every day people arrive, and we have no idea who these people are. They come from countries which are violent, where knifings and whatever else is acceptable, and they're just in here. And added to that, we now have a police force which has been emasculated because the officers, as you've been told, they don't go to a military-style Hendon like I was marched around at. They go to a university where they're basically told stop and search is racist and all this. So, and then you have police officers. I did some research, FOI, 70% of the Met hadn't arrested anybody in a year. How can that be?
What are they doing?
Well, that's my question, because I think my record was 4 arrests in a day, not in a year, and everybody was expected to get 10 a month. So you have this police force which is ineffectual. In my view, they've recruited a lot of the wrong people. Instead of going after ex-servicemen and whatever else, they're recruiting the wrong people, students in this, and they're led by people who are students. There's no... With the police, all the senior officers, when I joined, about half of them were ex-army, I think. No, they're all of the same ilk, ex-students, and there's no diversity of thought at all. They all believe the same thing. So you've got the police force that side. Then you've got the courts, OK? Oh, and we know that, for instance, theft, 1% of thefts is solved. 1. So if you're a thief of mobile phones or watches, you know you've got 99 times chance. So you've got the police, and then you've got the courts. You go to court, unless you put tweets out which say horrible things, you might get a suspended sentence. I look at this succession of people going to court for the most wicked crimes, you know, sexual offences and all the suspended sentences. So you've got that as well. So you've got all these criminals coming into the country, you've got an ineffectual police force and the courts that don't send them to jail. So, and then people say, do you know what, I wonder why there's lots of crime.
Do you know, it's small fry compared to the sort of crimes we're discussing, but the other day my car's parked on a residential street in London and someone had smashed into it quite significantly. I don't know who, it happened during the night. Clearly smashed into the car and going, oh well, I'm just going to drive off then. Not leaving the note under the windscreen wiper that used to happen in a high trust society. I would imagine it's probably some foreign Uber driver. It was black paint on the vehicle. Anyway, I go to the local pub. They've got CCTV covering where my car was parked. The girl there had a look and said, oh, yeah, there's a black car. It reverses round. He gets out. He has a look to see what he's done. He gets back in. And I said, great, can I have that? No, GDPR. GDPR, you're not allowed that footage. You've got to, the police or the insurance company have got to request it, so report it to the police, obviously, to get my crime reference number. They send me a nice letter, hand-signed, saying, oh, sorry, we don't do this anymore. I'm like, it might be a small thing, but I've had to pay 850 quid in order to, you know, my whatchamacallit, in order to get that repair done. The person who's done it is just scot-free.
It is.
And it's these little things, isn't it? It's these little things that build up that people get away with all the time, and it does escalate.
I was thinking the other day, Alex, when I was a young police officer, I used to stand in the station offices, and hardly any of them anymore, is there? And people would come in and say, oh, I'm going on holiday next week, and they give you an address, and that meant on night duty somebody went round and had a look. Can you imagine the police doing that today? You know, how could we do that? That was in the sort of late 80s, early 90s. And we had that high trust society then where people would go along with the rules. But what you see now is, and I was in a shop near me, and there's two old ladies, and they're in this post office, and people come in, and it's like a supermarket as well, and they just blatantly steal stuff. And they say, if you say anything, we know where you live, and all this sort of stuff. And what they're behind the counter seeing people steal value of goods, which probably is equivalent of their wage for working 8 or 10 hours. And the point in society where you get to where obeying the rules is the stupid option. That tipping point. And I think really when people look around, when you go in a shop and people are blatantly, you know, not just, they don't like conceal things in the jacket.
No, they walk out.
So when you're in there thinking, why am I being a mug paying for all this? When this other guy, and the security guard, because he's been not only GDPR, or health and safety, if you touch him, can't do anything about that. So the security guard just stands there and watch these guys walk out. And it's this breakdown with society. And all our politicians seem they don't seem to see this. And what is going on that they're not feeling they need to crack down? If we need more prisons, let's build more prisons. Their solution is to let people out earlier. And what do they think they do? But the trouble is, the people who make these decisions, they don't live on the council estate where those people are released to. They're released to misery causers who just, like the ladies in the shop, they bully them, they steal from them, the antisocial behaviour. But the politicians and all these clever people, allegedly, who say, let's release people early, they live in a nice big house where these people don't come to.
I remember reading a story in the papers going back quite some time ago now, and it was about this black kid who was on a bike, he had a belly on, he had his rucksack and the glint of a knife in his rucksack, and the police tried to intercept him. They asked him to stop, he wouldn't stop, he charged on through them, so they went after him and did what they could to push him off that bike. And the mother was like, it's so terrible, he had to go to hospital, he hurt his head, this was a racist attack. What does she think her son's doing? Cycling to a sushi class with that massive knife? It disgusts me that people like her platform banging the drum for it is racism, disproportionately affects our community. And it's this ghoulishness that is contributing to the fact, like I said, we haven't got a description of the perpetrator of this offence, which usually indicates one thing. It is almost saying to a subset of society, you can act with immunity because of your skin colour.
It is really bad. And what we've got to, at least now, because we've got talk and stations like this, we can actually debate it. And people are now getting figures, aren't we, about what countries people come from and who commits the most crime. And often, the people they attack are so women and girls with sexual offences in particular. That's really, really bad, and it's been a hidden secret. I was on New Year's Eve once. I was like the senior detective for when it was New Year's Eve in Trafalgar Square, and the senior officers well knew who was doing the indecent assaults, but it was all sort of covered up then. Luckily, and I was in Cologne. I went to Cologne after all the sex attacks to advise there, and again the authorities say it's the same in all of Western Europe. Germany, Sweden, wherever, they try to cover up the truth. At least now we're getting some facts that we can say these things. And the ridiculous thing you say about this young black fellow with a knife is the saddest thing. You say, oh, yeah, all this, it's racist and this. 60% of the knife murders in London are committed by young black men. Young black men represent about 2% of the population of London. But the sad thing is, when women like that mother say you shouldn't be stopping him with a knife, it is young black men who get killed, invariably, with those knives. And so what we do no favours, that the police have gone out of the way, politicians of all colours, Theresa May, Sadiq Khan, they have said, oh, we've got to reduce stop and search. The consequence of that is that young people die, and it's horrible.
Couldn't agree more. Mike Neville, thank you ever so much. A brilliant truth speaker that you are. Brave man indeed. Right, we're going to be taking a short break now. After the break, we're going to be taking some of your calls. 0344 499 1000 is the number to dial if you want to join in the conversation. And after that, we have a very special treat for you, because Dean and I, the producer and I, we were having a few pints of cider together the other day thinking, what can we do at the weekends to make things fun? And we've come up with this concept of bringing in a segment all about a retro year. That's right. At the end of every show, we're going to go back in time, pick a year and remind ourselves of all the ghastly memories we'd rather not have, and also the ones we would. This Saturday is 1992. Do you remember what happened then? Do you remember what number one was? What was in the cinemas? Who was our Prime Minister? What were the big scandals? Don't bother Googling it. You'll ruin the surprise. We're going to be talking about all of that just after this. Don't go anywhere. Fun, fun, fun.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, welcome back. I can't believe we've almost done for the day. 4 hours flies by when you're having as much fun as I'm having today. Anyway, it is the time of the show I look forward to the most. Well, that was until we came up with retro year, of course. But it's when I get to speak to you wonderful, discerning listeners. Let's join John, who's in Newcastle. Hi there, John.
Hello. My point of view is that at my age, the decades have passed by, and I now live on Fantasy Island, or as some would say, the Ile de Fantasy, comme ça. It's disgusting what's going on in this country today, and the politicians are pathetic. Many years ago, I was in agreement with Margaret Thatcher, on some points. But there again, she was a real leader. And she would never have had the dinghies coming across the channel. I'm sure of that. It's really pathetic, this country. The police are not respected in any way, shape or form. Law and order and justice is an absolute farce. I've seen some people myself, but I couldn't involve myself because of my age and my situation. Just taking stuff off the shelves and putting it in a pocket and walking out the door. And so, therefore, your law, order and justice is a farce. It is in a disgusting state, this country. And when you come to think that when I pass Calais every year, and the poor people of Calais in some respects, because they're taking the brunt, they've had the houses raided by people.
Right, this is it. We forget about the poor people who live in Calais, the French who live in Calais, who have all these migrants wandering around, nicking stuff, terrorising their neighbourhoods, all coalescing in Calais in the hope of getting to Britain. That can't be a fun place to live, can it?
Yes, but I blame us. I'd never blame the French here, because the fact is that, we've got to get they can talk about what they're going to do, but the only thing is we've got to get out of the European Court of Human Rights. That's the only way we're ever going to do anything. They can bring out, the Storm is bringing out this idea of how, we'll send 50, we're allowed by the French to send 50 back a week.
It's a joke.
And
It's
yet
a
there's
joke.
hundreds coming in. And we have a population the same size as France now. A population the same, and France is 2.5 times the size and land bigger than not England but Britain. And it's really, these politicians totally disgust me.
Oh no, I agree with you entirely. I agree with you entirely, and it breaks my heart, John. It really does. I used to be a resident of Newcastle. It's one of the greatest cities on earth. I absolutely love it. They're always wonderful to hear a Geordie accent as well. John in Newcastle, thank you ever so much. Let's speak now to Gordon, who's in Slough. Hi there, Gordon.
Hello, good morning, Alex. Thank you very much for taking my call. I've
My
got
pleasure.
a sausage sandwich on the go here if you're interested.
Oh, blimmin' heck, yeah. Normally, Dean's getting the fire up in the polystyrene trays and bringing me my eggs and my bacon and my sausages. Didn't even offer it today. He thinks I'm too fat. That's what he said. He said, I'm looking podgy. He said, look at you, Alex, you're carrying some extra timber. More of these fried breakfasts and we're going to have to crane you out of the building. I mean, you can't believe what I have to work with.
Outrageous, outrageous. Anyway, my reason for phoning in, for my sins, I'm a retired 30-year police officer, having worked London since the mid-late 80s.
Right.
And what I would wish to point out to you is something that I do feel that policing in London, and nationally in England and Wales as well, is hamstrung by virtue of the fact there isn't the infrastructure anymore that existed in 2010.
Right, what sort of infrastructure are we talking about?
The police stations. There are 75% less police stations in London now than there were in 2010.
That's mental. Why? What is that? I mean, is this going back to sort of Theresa May austerity and taking all the resources?
Yeah. What has happened is that because of the shortfall in funding that happened over that austerity period, policing generally, but particularly in London, they had to fill the financial gap. And how do you do that? You sell your property portfolio. Right, and the thing is, these were police stations that are well established, have been around some since Victorian times. They've all been either demolished, sold, private land, and Hendon itself, the whole big area of land that your former guest, eloquent guest Mike Neville, was talking about, that huge swathe of land that you used to get, as he said, almost like a military-style academy, which is what I also had in my early days.
Yeah,
that's all gone, and now what you've got is a very small, almost like a secondary school campus, which is pushing this narrative that's very, very different from the training I had. There's nothing wrong with having a degree, but that's what we've now got policing our streets in terms of mentality. And
not proper bobbies have learnt on the beat, learnt the rough and tumble way, learnt to be sort of like, the sort of gnarly men that we need to go after the scumbags and the toe rags. Gordon, thank you ever so much for giving us a call today. That was Gordon in Slough. Now we're going to pivot straight away into Retro Rewind, because I'm very excited.
1992.
I wasn't expecting that.
I didn't even say that.
Oh, I want to do that. I get Tech Hopper's got all sorts of buttons he's going to press today. Hold on. I'm joined by Steve Denyer for Retro Rewind, and this year today. How am I going to say it? I haven't even thought about how I'm going to introduce
The
this
day
segment.
in this year.
Today's year today.
1992. Well, what an incredible year, and what a great first year to talk to you about, because 1992 really rocked, like politically, the royal family, the Diana fallout. You had the most amazing kind of Freddie Mercury tribute concert. You had Chris Evans rocking out. Should we start talking about the Charles and Diana thing?
Let's go. Yeah, let's go. So I've got a whole list here. What happened in
1992. Well, legendary, and we didn't know this at the time, but at the end of the year, it was the Queen saying that this year was her Annus Horribilis. Do you remember?
Oh, that was 1992, the Annus Horribilis.
This was the year, and the year started off, I remember every day on my way into work and at school reading the headlines about Charles and Diana and the fact that they clearly weren't getting on, they weren't talking to each other. You then had, by June, the Andrew Morton book. About Princess Diana. And do you remember he originally said she wasn't involved with this book? he said that there'd been transcripts, he'd done research.
Yeah.
I interviewed him in New York about a decade ago, and he said, you know, at the time, she really couldn't be part of this book. But then, of course, after she passed away, they re-released the book, and it did come from her. And we learnt about her bulimia, suicidal thoughts, the problems she was having in the marriage. This was pre-Panorama, the Panorama special was in '95, wasn't it? So you had the Squidgy Gate tapes. Do you remember that?
Squidgy Gate tapes?
That was it James Ghibli, wasn't it? The Squidgy Gate, Princess Diana talking to James, and they were talking very kind of lovey-dovey. It was in The Crown. It was one of the episodes in The Crown. But it was hugely embarrassing for the Queen. You had the fire at Windsor Castle as well. This was all going on.
And wasn't it sort of Fergie and Andrew sort of, was that the same time that they broke up?
That was kind of going on, wasn't it? At the end of the year, in December in 1992, we all remember John Major standing up in Parliament saying that they decided to split, Charles and Diana.
Yeah, because it was the general election in 1992 that we got him of the big top lip.
Do you remember that?
Yeah. Well, no, I don't massively remember it because I'd have been like 9 years old at best.
What I remember about that election is that election kind of signalled what was to be John Major's Back to Basics campaign. It all happened. That was kind of as we went into 1993. So they wanted to strip politics back, family values, and of course, one by one, you had all these sleazy kind of news events and terrible things going on in the background.
The Tory sleaze.
It was all going on in 1992.
Wasn't he called Bumpin' Uglies with old... Was it Edwina Curry?
That's right.
I know. That's not a mental image that you want.
No one wanted
Sorry
that.
if you've just puked
But
up
you
your
also had
cornflakes.
Spitting Image on a Sunday night, and do you remember the John Major
so
puppets
cool.
became greyer and greyer, and he would just have a plate of peas, and there'd be sketches with him and a winner. There was so much going on in this
TV
year.
was blimmin' solid in 90. Well, there's two sides to television in 92. Now, you got on the list here one of the greatest programmes that's ever been made, The Big Breakfast, of course, TFI Friday, all that sort of gonzo journalism, interviewing people on that big bed. It was just sort of manic and hectic.
Do you remember it was in a house, The Big Breakfast? It was the first time most of us had ever seen Chris Evans. Of course, Chris Evans of our own parish here every morning on Virgin Radio, Monday to Friday, and he always talks about The Big Breakfast and the fact that as soon as he got that job, of course, he became overnight a household name. We had Saturday morning TV like The Big Breakfast, but we didn't have it in the week.
He did something so different in the 90s. I was in makeup room the other day and I said, can you just bring it back? Because TFI Friday was brilliant, Big Breakfast was brilliant, the 90s are one of the best decades.
Yeah.
You know, that gonzo journalism, it was so refreshing and different and fun. I mean, you don't get that level of irreverency on a breakfast show anymore, unless you tune into this one, of course. But it was absolutely amazing.
And it worked. It got 2 million viewers every morning on Channel 4.
Wow.
It was 7 till 9 a.m. It was famous for getting massive A-list Hollywood stars on the bed. Do you remember with Paul Yates?
Yeah, I remember that bed.
She would ask anything, and they would play along with it, and we hadn't seen anything like this. It was a game changer. It was daring. It was risky. My parents hated it. That's why I loved it. You know when your parents hate
every day before school, getting ready, Big Breakfast on. It was amazing. However, there was a dark side to television, in the form of that horrible pink and yellow spotted thing. I mean, actually, Noel's House Party, right? Mr. Blobby. I mean, Noel's House Party, I was watching it back on YouTube the other day because I minded to sort of remind myself of the great telly of the 90s.
Yeah.
And Noel's House Party was also just weird. You know, people turning up at a door, ding-dong, people getting slimed. And then was a little kid at primary school going for sleepovers with my mates, and we used to nick all of her mum's most expensive bathroom products, mix it in the sink with water and toilet roll to try and make her in slime. Poor
It's all
mother.
Noel's fault.
Yeah.
I mean, it was on the edge, you know, the seat of your pants kind of stuff. It was live. Mr. Blobby, interesting enough, was only supposed to be one. It was supposed to be on one sketch, but the viewers loved him. The same man was in the same suit for 25 years. They only made 3 suits, and one of them sold for £70,000.
No way.
They then went on.
Who is he? Who is the man who's in
He's called Barry.
Barry, of course he
Go on,
is.
Baz.
Well, Baz.
Come on, Baz.
Yeah.
And he must have been very hot in the summer with days like this.
I hated that thing.
But it was a health and safety nightmare. He often fell on people because the person couldn't see out of the costume. He would fall into sets and they would collapse live. They made a theme park, which was a disaster. Apparently, it was in Somerset. No one went. I mean, but he did have a #1 hit song, on the chart.
I remember it. Oh, no,
it was all going on. It was all going on.
There were some pretty grim things in the 90s,
really
and Mr. Blobby is one of them.
We're dressing it up, aren't we?
Oh, God. I mean, you wouldn't get away with that in 2025, would you? No one's out buying that. But back in the 90s, everyone was rushing out, make it #1. Oh, blimey. But when it comes to #1s of the 90s, I mean, there was one song, wasn't there?
Yeah, I know which one you're going to talk about.
Shall we see if the audience can guess as Tech Up lines it up? What was it, folks, back
it's
at home?
It's from a massive movie.
Massive movie of the same year.
Two people that you wouldn't expect to kind of, well, can I just say, it was Whitney Houston's first ever movie. She'd never acted.
Had she not?
She had never acted at all, and she went into this movie, and the song in question wasn't even going to be part of the movie.
I'm looking at Tech Up and...
There we go! And it was the year I started to go clubbing, so they played this song at the end of the night.
The snogging
5 minutes to 2, when the lights switched on, and it was absolute carnage in the nightclub.
And you suddenly realise you're kissing someone who looks like Ozzy Osbourne.
Exactly.
Like,
that happened most weekends in my life.
But, you know, I remember reading a news story of some woman who went mental and reported her neighbours to the police because this woman just played that song over and over and over. I mean, you couldn't escape it, could you?
No. No one could sing that song as well as Whitney. And in fact, Whitney couldn't sing that song.
Absolutely
well,
disagree.
Dolly Parton.
Thank you.
I think
the original is still the best because, you know, she might be able to belt out a big note, but Dolly's is actually heartbreaking.
Yeah, no, it is.
There's something really poignant about the way that she sort of spoke those words in the middle, whereas Whitney Houston just comes out of her massive lungs and pelts out a banger. Yeah, it was a great hit, but it sort of
Whitney was
does drive
at
me
her
mad.
best, I think, in this year, though, because she looked healthy, she was acting, the songs were good. I went to see her at Wembley Arena, and the ticket was £10, right?
Oh, my goodness.
But
inflation
she
since
really
92.
was great.
Now, very quickly, the films also out in 1992 were, as well as The Bodyguard.
We had Wayne's World. Do you remember that?
I do.
That gave us the legendary term. Was it schwing?
Sure, Wayne.
Wayne's World was just it was a sketch on Saturday Night Live, and everyone said you can't make a whole movie.
Yeah. Thank you, Tech Up.
But I was a teenager, you know, 16, 17, and it really came. Home Alone 2. Home Alone 2 was the one with Donald Trump.
Donald Trump,
do you remember?
of course, the
when
cameo.
They went to Trump Tower, so that was
And
good.
apparently Aladdin, that was a big Disney film. I remember watching that. I had Aladdin everything at one point. Aladdin on my Nintendo, watched the Aladdin when it was on Breakfast TV as a series.
The merch on that, it was just unbelievable.
And the Addams Family. Anyway, that's all we've got time for right now. What a year. But don't go anywhere, because we're going to be remembering one of the biggest shows that was launched that year, watched by over 14 million viewers on Saturday night at its peak. Do you know what it is? We're going to have a star from it after this.
Some breaking news this morning revealed that under the Terrorist Act, 242 people were arrested in the year to June of this year.
That's something you can indulge in as to all the people who aren't going to prison because, well, there's no prison spaces.
So this is a talk exclusive we've been looking at.
I said, you take these cuffs off me and speak to me like a human being rather than a common criminal.
You're just left wondering, does these people who lead us actually hate Britain?
Yeah.
Do they not love our country and everything that we've stood for?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, before the break, I said that there was a show that launched in 1992. One of my favourite shows ever. I was a fanatic. At its peak, it was watched by over 14 million viewers on a Saturday night. Everybody watched it in the 90s. Everyone fancied someone from it. And I think, here it is. Oh! 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 I still get excited listening to that.
I can just picture the openings. Amazing, wasn't it?
Oh, the best
14 million people.
I love the fact is one of the things they've brought back and I thought, oh, the remake's going to be rubbish. No, it's so good. I still obsessively watch it. I won't miss an episode of Gladiators anyway. I was talking, wasn't I, that everyone fancied a Gladiator.
Yeah.
Everyone fancied it. I reckon if you could do a league table of which Gladiators were fancied the most, our next guest would have been #1. Without a doubt, it is the gorgeous, the impressive Diane Udell, who, of course, was otherwise known as Jet. There she is! It's Jet! It's actually Jet! Oh, my goodness. Honestly, my 13-year-old brother right now, well, when he's 43 now, but, you know, in his youth, he'd be like, oh, I think, to be honest, though, I think he actually preferred lightning. Shh.
Oh, don't.
Can't confess to that.
Can I say I had a picture of Jet on my bedroom wall?
Oh, really?
Is that embarrassing? I'm getting embarrassing now. I'm sorry, but I have to admit it.
No, we're here calling you Jet. Do you still get called Jet, Diana, or have people managed to get over that and call you by your name now?
It depends. It depends entirely on the situation. People go, Diane. I'm like, listen, you can call me Jet still. It's fine. I've had over 30 years to get used to it.
I mean, you were probably the most iconic gladiator. Gorgeous, standing there with your prowess, your little leotard, your mane of beautiful brown hair, which you've still got, smashing the bonts off someone with one of those giant pogo sticks, swinging on the rings. It's the best programme ever. How on earth did you end up getting involved?
I'd done a fitness competition and it had been photographed and videoed in the very early days that it wasn't a bodybuilding competition because I'd been a dancer and a choreographer and teacher and stuff beforehand, so it was quite a functional thing to do. And I think they were kind of going, oh, who are we going to choose for Gladiators? We need people with muscle that look right, but can they move right? Have they got the athletic prowess? So I was sort of spotted, and then I had the casting agent, Andy Norgate, who went on to be one of the referees in the whole of the original series. And I think he's still involved in some way or another with the BBC lot as well, which is great. So it's kind of a legacy going on with some of them. And I just got this, can you please call LWT? And then next thing I'm at Woolwich Barracks, doing the army assault course, which I loved. I looked like little Mario, and then the gym tests in the gymnasium afterwards, and that's how it was. And I personally think it's because there wasn't a great pool of talent at the time, or they hadn't sort of selected from a very wide.
Don't do yourself down.
Yeah.
You were kidding me. No, you were picked because you were both brilliantly athletic and hot. Let's be fair about this. Now, I want you to spill the beans because I grew up watching Gladiators, you know, and you all kind of had your favourites. Who did you fancy, Steve?
Jess, obviously.
Obviously. Yeah. I mean,
I'm going red.
Yeah. No one can see that red under that suntan you've got. But mine, of course, was Hunter. All the girls fancied Hunter. But I want to know what some of these people are like behind the scenes because, you know, Wolf was that sort of two-dimensional character with his long hair who scared everyone. Then you had Shadow with his scary yellow eyes, you know, staring at people. I mean, who was your best mate on the series?
Until, well, year 2, the lovely Kate Staples, now at OBE, joined us, and we just hit it off straight away.
So who was Kate Staples? You can't use their civilian names.
Zodiac.
Zodiac.
Zodiac. And of course, Kim Lightning, Kim Betts, all the way through. She's just for me, and still is the ultimate female gladiator. If you can check her out now, she still looks incredible, performs incredibly. But yeah, those two, and of course James Hunter became a little bit more than a friend for a year of our time, and we're still really good friends to this day.
I love that. That was like the ultimate sort of power couple, wasn't it? You broke a lot of teenage girls' hearts, and he broke a lot too. Well, both of you just broke a load of teenage hearts by hooking up, is all I can say.
Can I ask a question? Because obviously your life must have changed overnight. Alex mentioned you have 14 million people watching this show. I mean, you just don't get viewing figures like that anymore. How did your life change?
Oh gosh, it did, and we were forewarned rather, by the producers, and I'd done quite a lot of media, TV and theatre before, but I always wanted to be the background person, the creative, and the creator, and not the front person. So it was a jar to my system. It wasn't comfortable for me, I must admit, and I'm still not that comfortable with that level. I wouldn't be able to do it today. I don't know how the guys do it today with multimedia and digital this and social media. It's a different landscape. So
I don't know, I reckon Gladiator's big now. The relaunch has been big, but like back in the 90s, I remember like cereal packets having your face on it. People were trading cards, getting the shinies to put in their sticker books.
The merch was immense.
The merch was massive. Where have the big foam fingers gone, by the way? Because I watch Gladiators now obsessively, but no one's doing all that anymore. I miss that. Yeah.
Probably a health and safety issue.
So, I mean, what was your favourite event?
Hang Tough had to be because of the dexterous ability to be able to still, having been a gymnast as a child, yeah, that was my favourite. And the wall, because again it was agility based, it was speed based, and I wasn't one of the bigger girls, so I didn't have a lot of kind of ballast to be able to do some of the more pugilistic type events as easy as the others. So yeah, definitely Hang Tough.
And let's be fair, Jet was the queen of Hang Tough, wasn't she?
Absolutely.